Attention! If you or a loved one have been affected by the CW show Supernatural between the years of 2005 and 2020, you may be eligible for financial compensation. Okay, I'm totally kidding, but you should still watch my YouTube video. Fully inspired by like Mike's videos of TV shows I've already seen, but like want to be reminded of all the wacky things that happened. Or Carrie Can Read's like book videos where she's summarizing books I have zero interest in ever reading. I hope this video is for you, whether you've seen the show and just want to know which episodes you should rewatch, or you've never seen Supernatural and you kind of want to know what's going on with Destiel, then hopefully you stick around. My qualifications are I've seen the first 4 seasons like 5 times. They're just very like dark and gritty and nostalgic for me, so I didn't mind rewatching. So I'll put like a list down in the comments below or on Tumblr of which episodes I think you should watch, that you maybe kind of can watch depending on what you're looking for, or episodes you can fully skip because they're not that good. But this video is going to be long as hell, so feel free to put this on in the background, and without further ado, let's get started with Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. I had printed out a bunch of pictures to hang up, but between a secondhand printer that decided not to use color and using photo paper that caused a bunch of glare, I'm just gonna have to edit in the photos, and I'm sorry in advance. So I obviously highly recommend watching the pilot. It was my first episode, and I think it really encapsulates the lore, the characters, the visual aesthetic, the like monster of the week vibes, and also the humor, and that's gonna be something I'm gonna have to kind of skip in these like summary videos because I can't go through every joke. Do all of them age well? No, not at all, but like we'll get there. The show first aired September 13th, 2005. We open in Lawrence, Kansas, November 2nd, 1982. And the first line of the entire show is, "Come on, let's say goodnight to your brother," because this show, putting all the monsters aside, all the angels that come later, is about 2 brothers who would do anything for each other, whether it's kill or be killed. We see a blonde mother in a nightgown holding a 4-year-old toddler. The dad comes in and they're a happy little family standing by the crib of a 6-month-old baby. The parents are Mary and John with their kids, Dean, the toddler, and Sam, the baby. As the family leaves the nursery, we see the IKEA moonlight in the corner flicker. Mary is alone in her room when she hears static coming from the baby monitor, so she gets up and she walks over to the nursery where she sees a man standing by the crib. She asks if Sam's okay, she gets dismissed, and as she's going back to her room, she sees like TV static coming from downstairs. So she walks over the stairs, and that's when she sees John asleep in the recliner. Then she screams. John wakes up, runs up the stairs, bursts into the nursery, and as he walks over to the crib, he sees that baby Sam is totally fine. So as he's going to fix the blanket, a drop of blood lands straight on his hand. John looks up, he sees Mary like pinned to the ceiling, her stomach is slit, and the entire ceiling catches on fire. Rest in peace, Mary Winchester. You had no personality, and you had to be fridged for this entire show to even happen. But like, they'll try and fix it in the future. John then hands the baby to the toddler and says, "Don't look back, get your brother out of here." John then tries to go back for Mary, but then like a giant fireball explosion happens. So then the toddler is outside holding his brother, and he says, "It's okay, Sam." But let's go to present day. October 31st, 2004, in Stanford, California. We see a pretty blonde in a nurse costume telling her boyfriend that they have to go out to celebrate because he got a 174 on his LSAT. So it is like 5 points less than Elwood's, but like, hey, out of 180, it's not bad. But these are Jess and grown-up Sam. You might recognize him as Dean from Gilmore Girls. This is Sam, not Dean. After they go out, they come home and they go to bed, and then we hear a thud of someone breaking into the house in the middle of the night. There's a pretty cool scene of Sam like slowly almost stalking this intruder through his own home, and then there's like an equally matched fight in front of these like windows so you can see their silhouettes as they're fighting, which is really cool. But then Sam gets pinned, and then the intruder goes, "Easy, Tiger, you're out of practice." And it's Dean Winchester. The 2 of them get up. Dean immediately hits on Jess. Bruh. This is why I was a Sam girly back in the day. I now understand why people are so into Dean, like, especially in the early seasons. You're like, he's just so sad. But, oh my gosh, he hits on everyone. Dean says that he has to borrow Sam. He says a very important quote, "Dad hasn't been home in a few days." Sam, like, brushes it off, thinking it's like a bender. And Dean like reiterates, no, Dad's on a hunting trip and I haven't heard from him in a few days. At which point Sam realizes the gravity of the situation. The two of them go outside and we meet yet another important character. This is Baby. She's Dean's beautiful Impala, and they open the trunk and it is filled with like so many different kinds of weapons. Like, it's insane. And so Sam says that he quit hunting for good and that John will be fine fighting Ghost, like always. The boys argue. Sam says that he was given a gun when he was 9 to fight the monster in his closet. Bad parenting there, John. And then he says something about how, are you sure this is what Mom would have wanted, which then pisses Dean off. Dean is upset that Sam quit and like left him. And Sam says when he wanted to go to college, John said to never come back. And so Dean says that he doesn't want to do this alone. And for context, like, Sam is like 22 and so Dean is 26, which is a little weird because I started watching this show when I was 15 and now I'm older than season 1 Dean. But we're not going to unpack that. And so Sam agrees to come, except he does have a law school interview in 2 days, so they have to be back before then. So here's the first case. A bunch of men have disappeared off the same 5-mile stretch of road, 10 in the last 20 years. John called and there's some kind of like hissing in the background of the voicemail. And so for like the first time and probably like one of the last times, the boys like run the hiss through some kind of program and it sounds like a woman's voice saying, I can never go home. And then we get to see what I'm going to lovingly call the victim POV. We see a guy driving down the road on the phone with some girl and he says he can't come over because he has work in the morning. But then like a hot, glitchy girl in like a white dress is standing by the side of the road, so he stops and offers to drive her home. She like seduces him with just her knee, so they end up driving back to her house, which is like old and abandoned and dilapidated. As they pull up, she disappears from his car, and as he's going to back away, she reappears. And then we see him driving through an out of order sign on a bridge, and there's like a blood splatter on the windshield. But let's cut back to the boys. We learn about their like credit card scams for the first time, and I really missed these vibes of the early seasons of them just, cross country road tripping, doing kind of shady things. My camera can only record 30 minutes at a time, and this is going to take me forever, so I apologize in advance if you see some jumping around. Eventually pull up to the crime scene. Dean grabs some fake federal marshal's badges out of his trunk, and they just walk into the crime scene with their baby faces and like plain clothes. They get some information, but then they go to a diner and they get a lot more information from like the locals about nearby legends. This ghost is just a woman who haunts bodies of water because she killed herself after drowning her 2 kids because she was upset about her husband's cheating. The boys go back to the bridge at night and they argue about if Sam should tell Jess about the monster hunting and like who he really is if he's thinking about marrying her. And then they also fight about their mom. The ghost decides to take over Baby and try to run them off the road. Sam jumps off and holds onto the bridge. Dean fully jumps into the water and then he's all gross and muddy, so they decide to go get a motel room. As they're checking in, they find out that their dad actually already has had a room for about a month. As they break in, we see that it's John's like conspiracy lair. He has pictures and like notes everywhere. There's a little salt circle around the door to keep any monsters or ghosts specifically out. Sam then tries to apologize to Dean, and we get our first little like jerk bitch like back and forth, which happens throughout the show. Dean goes out to get food the next morning and spots the cops looking for them. Sam makes a break for it and Dean distracts them, and we get another like well-known Tumblr gift set, I think, of fake federal marshals, fake credit cards. You got anything that's real? And Dean gives a little smirk and he says, my boobs. He gets taken into custody and the cop throws down John's hunting journal on the table. And like this hunting journal is like quite important. It's all the notes that John has taken on all the different monsters and cases that he's done over the years. The cop already knows Dean's name and he flips to a page that says Dean 35 111. While this is happening, Sam goes to talk to the ghost husband who's like still alive. Like this case is not that old. And they find out that John has already been there, like pretending to be a reporter. There's some kind of fake 911 call, and so Dean makes a break for it. We see Sam is driving down the road when like the ghost appears in his back seat. She asks him to drive her home. He says no. She then takes over the car and drives them there anyways. Once parked outside, he says, you can't kill me, I've never been unfaithful. And she says, you will be, and just starts making out with him. She tries to then rip out his heart, but Dean shows up. I guess he like ran here. and starts shooting through the back window of the car. At this point, it like distracts the ghost, and Sam can sit up and he says, "I'm taking you home," and just drives through the wall of the house. The ghost at this point like sees a painting of her and her children. And then Dean is helping Sam get out of the car when the two of them get pinned to the wall by like a giant dresser that was like telekinetically thrown at them. This happens a lot. Like, I wouldn't say take a shot every time I mention it, but like someone should keep track in the comments down below how many times these boys get thrown into walls by like ghosts and different like creature powers, because it happens every episode, it feels like. And so the boys are just like pinned to the wall when a bunch of water comes down the stairs, and we see these two creepy ghost children go, "Come home, mommy." And then the ghost screams, and then she like disappears with the sound of a drain gurgling. I don't know. That's it for the case. And so the boys figure out that the coordinates that they got from John's journal were for Black Bottle Ridge in Colorado, and Dean wants to just drive there overnight and they could get there in a couple days. But Sam reminds Dean that he has the interview in 10 hours. So Dean drives him home and drops him off, and Sam goes, "Maybe we can like catch up again sometime," because they've gone like 4 years without talking to each other. Dean drives off. Sam walks in. He calls out to Jess. He doesn't get an answer, but he's exhausted, so he just kind of throws his stuff down and like throws himself back on his bed. And as he opens his eyes, he sees Jess stuck to the ceiling in a white nightgown, her stomach slit, and the entire ceiling catches fire. Obviously, Dean has just driven off, so he comes back and gets Sam out of the burning building again. So outside, Sam looks like forlornly at Dean, throws his gun into the trunk of the car, and says, "We've got work to do." So that's it. That's the pilot. I still highly recommend watching the pilot, and hopefully future episodes are going to be shorter. I just wanted to really go in depth on this one. I don't really want to get sidetracked by like fun fan theories or like headcanons, like how Cass's name is spelled. So if you have any favorites, feel free to like comment them down below. Maybe I'll do like a full video on just those. But if this video gets like, I don't know, 10,000 views, I'll buy myself a nice printer, and then we'll be higher quality, I promise. Let's move on to Season 1, Episode 2, Wendigo. We start with the victim POV. There's some campers. One of them's playing on his DS. This is actually Corey Monteith from Glee. Then another guy is like filming a video to send to his sister on his like old flip phone. The third guy goes outside to piss. He hears a twig crack, and we cut away as he screams. This then makes Corey Monteith stick his head out of the tent, and the monster runs up to him, grabs him, and drags him away. And finally, the one like filming on his phone sees the monster going around the tent. It slashes it and takes him away as well. Going back to the Winchester boys, Sammy goes to Jess's grave and he starts to cry because he never told her about the monster stuff, and he thinks that maybe that could have like protected her. But then an arm reaches out of the grave and grabs him. He wakes up. He's been having a nightmare in Dean's car. And so they're heading toward the coordinates that they saw in the last episode. So the coordinates are for like the middle of a national park in Colorado. As they get up there, they lie and they say they're like environmental majors, which is funny because like in the early seasons they are like 22, 26, so they can kind of get away with all that stuff. And so they're at like the park rangers. He can like tell that they're lying, and there's some girl there who's pretty and her name is Haley, and she's upset because her brother's missing, but they can't mark him as a missing person because their like camping permit still says that they're supposed to be gone, but she doesn't believe that because she didn't get like a new video from him. Sam wants to like go find John, but Dean decides that they should try and actually help. So he gets a copy of the permit and heads over to Haley's and pretends to be a park ranger, but she lets them in with their fake IDs. Obviously, Haley's hot and cool and likes Dean's car. We find that her older brother's name is Tommy and her little brother's name is Ben. Here's the case. 8 people have disappeared in the span of about a month every year for 23 years. You'll see that this is like classic for Supernatural. There's a certain time frame, a certain weird number of people being gone or like dead, because it kind of marks like a pattern rather than just like random things happening. The boys get to watch the video and they see that the monster in the background is like super fast, and then they go to an old man's cabin to like learn more about the monster because he was the sole survivor of an attack years ago. And the old man says that he doesn't think it's a bear because the monster somehow unlocked the door and like dragged his parents away. And Sam and Dean actually do agree. At least it's not a ghost. And so Sam is like, because of the claw marks, I think we can kill this thing. So the next day, they decide to like go camping. Sam wants to leave everyone behind and just go the two of them, but they meet up with Haley in the parking lot with her perfectly curled hair, and she makes fun of Dean for being a park ranger who goes hiking in jeans and biking boots, and he says, "Sweetheart, I don't do shorts." Which is a lie. The hiking group is Sam, Dean, Haley, Ben, and their like guide Roy. As they are climbing up, they find like the destroyed camp, actually like right where John's coordinates were. Dean connects with Haley because he also tells her like a half truth about how they're looking for their dad. We hear a scream and everyone like runs, but they don't see anyone. And so when they go back, all of their stuff is gone. Sam now thinks that this monster is a Wendigo, which like is weird because they're only supposed to be like Minnesota, and for context, they're like Native American spirits, so it's kind of weird that the show put them in there. But like, the show's not great. It's 2005. But here's like the supernatural version of the lore. These creatures are super fast, can mimic human voices, they have claws, guns don't work on them, and the legend is that someone had gotten cut off from their supplies and they turned to cannibalism and like got these weird magic powers and like lose their humanity. This one seems to be keeping victims alive to like help him hibernate throughout the year. So Sam is trying to get everyone to like leave because it's not safe, but Haley and the guide want to stay, so they actually stay and camp the night. The boys have a heart to heart, and we get a very important quote from Dean that what they're doing is saving people, hunting things, the family business. And so Sam says that he never really understood John until now, when he also lost the love of his life to like an unknown weird entity who's probably the same one because of the exact same circumstances and how Jess and Mary died. Dean doesn't really care or need to understand his father, like he's always just followed orders like a good little soldier. So then the monster tries to like draw them out that night, and Roy the guide like shoots it and thinks that he gets it, and so he runs off after it. But then we see him like get pulled up into a tree by his neck. The next day, the group finds this like bloody claw mark on a tree, and there's one single drop of blood, and then Roy's entire body falls out with the neck snapped. So that's great. Sorry, my camera might have shifted. So Haley and Dean get taken by the monster, and Ben and Sam are looking for them, and they end up like breaking through a wall and land in like an old abandoned mine shaft. They do find Haley, Dean, and Tommy, and Tommy's not doing well. He's like all tied up, all like broken and bruised. The group is like stuck down in the mines, and they're like trying to escape. Dean then like breaks off from the group and shoots the monster with like a flare gun, and this like gray Nosferatu like creature with like pointy ears and big long claws just kind of like burns up from the inside. I saw I saw a Tumblr post that said that all these monsters are just people, and they're not wrong. Like angels are just people and they sometimes have weird eyes and like wings. Demons are just people but with like black eyes sometimes. Uh they even have like a dragon, it's just a man. Like yeah. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, so at the end of the episode, they like call ambulance for Tommy because he's not doing well. Dean looks hot, and he's a cocky little smirk as Haley like gives him a kiss on the cheek, and she gets to survive another day because she did not sleep with him. And trust me, the stats on this are not that great. Oh, I fully forgot to recommend the second episode. So I would say sure, it has some iconic lines, and like I said, Dean does look hot. Uh, but like you don't have to watch it, but like it's not like an automatic skip either. Season 1, episode 3, Dead in the Water. I would also put this episode in the middle area. I don't personally love the plot. It's like the first time we get to see Dean interact with kids, and I think that's really fun. We start with the victim POV. We see this girl, she's like swimming in the lake and she just gets pulled underwater. Back with the Winchesters, we find out that 3 people have already died this year in the lake. They've already dragged the bottom of it and found no bodies, and so the funerals are just empty caskets. We also find out that the dam that's like keeping this lake is leaking, And so within 6 months, there won't be a lake anymore, and the pace seems to be picking up in the number of people who have died. And there's been 6 more bodies in the last 35 years. The boys introduce themselves as Agents Ford and Hamill. I guess they're Star Wars nerds. And for reference, if there's anything you want to know more about, there is probably a list out there on the internet, whether it's all the weird agent names they've given, but then also there's lists of what every hotel room looks like, what every monster is, how often they come up, every state they've visited. So I can't go into all that depth, but anything you want to find, you can probably see out there. Back to this episode. We meet Andrea Barr. She is the sheriff's daughter, and she has her son, Lucas. Dean loves it when a girl, like, kind of pushes back on him immediately hitting on them. And so she says, must be hard with your sense of direction, never being able to find your way to a decent pickup line. As the boys are leaving, Dean says, kids are the best. Sam says, you don't even like kids. Dean goes, yeah, I do. Sam, then name 3. The only children they interact are usually dead ghost children. It's fun to see Dean, like, actually be good with kids, because, like, he took care of Sam growing up. We find out that Andrea's husband is one of the last people who have died in the lake, and that Lucas, the kid, was actually with him and just, like, stranded for 2 hours out on the lake by himself. Lucas hasn't spoken in the last 2 months, so Dean walks over to him at the park and, like, tries to bond with him. Lucas is, like, drawing a really good picture of a bike, which, if you've ever tried to draw a bike, is extremely hard. Dean says, hey, if you want to draw a picture of the monster, like, even if you don't think we'll believe you, I think you should try. And it is a picture of a house with dark windows. We cut back to the Carltons. So the girl who disappeared in the lake at the beginning of the episode has a brother and a father. The dad seems, like, very reserved. The brother's like, oh, I'll, like, make dinner. But as the water in the sink is flowing, it turns brown, so he turns it off, and then the drain, like, starts filling up with more gross water. Every stupid person in a horror movie, he rolls up his sleeve and sticks his hand down into the murky water. Thankfully, he doesn't get his arm shredded, but he does get pulled in and drowns. And so Sam and Dean are discussing the case, and they don't think it's like a Loch Ness kind of monster, but some kind of, like, wraith or demon. They think that all this, like, water is connected to the lake, and that the first girl's dad was also Andrea's husband's godfather, that there might be a connection between them as well. They go back to Lucas and they get another drawing, and this time it's a church, a yellow house, and a gate with a man behind it. I can't summarize, like, every argument and sappy moment that the boys have, but most of the time their therapy is just, like, talking it out in the car. They end up at the yellow house and they ask the woman there about a boy on a bike, and the old woman says that her son Peter disappeared without a trace 35 years ago, which is when the body started disappearing. And she says that losing her son was worse than dying, which is what the Carlton dad also said when his daughter had died. The Winchesters go back to the Carlton house thinking that maybe Bill was the person who killed Peter when they were, like, kids, and that's why everyone he loves is being punished. And when they get there, they actually see Bill on, like, a motorboat headed toward the center of the lake. And so they're, like, running and yelling, and the boat then somehow gets hit by something and just goes flying across. When they're back at the police station, the sheriff is pissed off at these 2 guys because, 1, they saw Bill die, 2, they're on a first name basis with his daughter, and 3, Lucas is even more freaked out and he, like, grabs onto Dean. And so at this point, the sheriff has found out that they're not actually with the U.S. Wildlife Department. He tries to kick him out of town. And as they're driving away, Dean has a really bad feeling because he thinks that Lucas might be, like, some kind of psychic. Like, he was still upset, so he's thinking that people might still die. We cut back and we see Andrea taking a bath, and obviously the water starts to turn brown, and she, like, fully gets pulled under. But the boys were already on their way back to her house, so they, like, break in and they pull her out and save her. She hasn't slept with Dean yet, so she can't die. She's getting pulled under. She, like, hears the voice of a kid saying, come play with me. And we actually found out that the sheriff, her father, was also involved in this kid Peter's death. Lucas just walks outside and stands where the grave of the bike is. And the sheriff comes back and he's pissed, but then he, like, confesses, because a lot of times people just share all their information in this show. And so as all the adults are discussing this, Lucas walks off towards the end of the pier, and he sees a little, like, green army man toy and tries to grab it, and a gray kid's arm reaches up and drags him into the lake. So Sam and Dean immediately jump in, but they can't seem to find Lucas, and this creepy gray underwater child starts staring at the sheriff. And so the sheriff walks into the water saying, take me instead. So he gets pulled under, and then Dean does actually come back up with Lucas. Now we're at the end of the episode. Everything's kind of fine, kind of not. A lot of people have died. And so Lucas, who hasn't really been speaking this whole time, I guess Dean taught him to say Zeppelin rules. And then Andrea kisses him on the lips. And so she was much closer to dying than Haley was, but like didn't fully sleep with him, so she survived. It's rough. It's rough out here to be a woman in the show Supernatural. And I probably should go more in depth on what that means for the show, but this is just a summary. We don't have time for that. People have probably already written many video essays about it. Season 1, Episode 4, Phantom Traveler. I would highly recommend this episode because it's like the first time we get to see demons, and I think there's some really fun like lore and some really bad CGI. So we start with the victim POV. There's like a business guy who's like nervous about flying, all like sweaty, and he goes to the bathroom to like wash his face. But as he's alone, a bunch of weird black particles like come out of the vent and go straight into his eyeballs. And so if you know anything about supernatural lore, this is the first time we get to see demons. And now the guy is like way more calm, and he gets on the flight and he's totally fine. It seems that at exactly 40 minutes after they took off, he just gets up and opens the emergency exit. The door goes flying off, it hits the back of the plane, and the entire thing crashes. Let's go back to the boys. First of all, there's this wild Tumblr thing where they took this iconic shot of them like slowly panning up Dean's body. He's fully clothed, by the way, but he's like on his stomach, and they took the curve of his back and his butt and made it into a formula. Why? 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 But yeah, I was like rewatching this and I'm like, it's that scene. What is that doing here? And so Sam comes back. It's like 6 a.m. and he hasn't been sleeping. He says that he's been having nightmares about Jess. And so Dean's phone starts ringing, and I guess it's like some friend from Pennsylvania that worked on an old case with John. So the boys go to see him. This man works in aviation. He plays them a recording from like the flight that just went down. And there's a bunch of weird static and some weird growling. Dean makes some fake Homeland Security IDs, and Sam isolates the like EVP static. I guess it says no survivors in the background, even though 7 out of 100 people on this flight survived. So that's weird. And so the boys go to a psych ward to see this guy named Max. He's one of the survivors. The Winchesters usually tell people, just tell us what you saw. Like, even if it sounds crazy and unbelievable, like, we'll believe you. And so this man says that it wasn't a ghost or like a haunted plane because he just saw an actual passenger open the door, even though it's extremely heavy with all like the tons of pressure like pushing the door in. Sam and Dean get some black and white suits, and they just like walk in to check out the like plane autopsy. It's like a really cool shot where they take all the parts of the plane and like put them back to try and like piece it back together and figure out what went wrong. And so Dean is like super proud of this little like EMF reader that he made out of like an old broken Walkman. And they find sulfur on the door handle. And as this is happening, 2 real like Homeland Security guys show up, and so the boys have to run. They think that this case is demonic possession, even though they've never heard of a demon trying to like take down an entire plane before. And they say, this isn't our normal gig. Demons don't want anything. They just want death and destruction, which is a funny way to like talk about demons in the show. And so we cut back to the airport, and there's like a reluctant pilot who happened to be like on the first crash, and we see those black particles come out of the air vent again and go straight into his eyes. And exactly 40 minutes after this like tiny flight takes off, he dive bombs straight for a power line to crash. And Sam does some research and says that there's been 6 plane crashes in the last decade that all went down exactly 40 minutes after they started, with no survivors. So it seems that the demon is now going after the last 7 people. The boys are on the road, and Sam's calling all the survivors, telling them to not take another flight and they'll like be reimbursed or whatever, like, you know, scammy stuff. And so Dean is now driving 5 hours straight to Indianapolis to stop the flight attendant Amanda. And somehow by like turning up the music and blasting it really loud, they make it there in time. They show up at the airport and they like call her, trying to convince her not to get on the flight. And she says no, and so they head to gate 13, and I guess like demons are really big on like Bible numbers. Sam wants to like exorcise the demon once they find out who it is, and Dean really does not want to get on this flight. I guess he has like a big fear of flying, and this is why we always see the boys drive everywhere. Like, this is the excuse to have baby in every episode, is that they never fly except for like this one episode. Especially knowing that the plane is going to crash, he can't let Sam go alone. And calm himself down, Dean then hums Metallica, and they're trying to like come up with a game plan. And so it seems that like demons go after people in like a fragile state of mind, so Dean cannot get too panicked or else he might get taken over. Dean somehow got a full bottle of holy water onto the flight, so they're like going to the back to check on Amanda, and they're like trying to figure out with like an EMF reader like who on this flight is the demon, a trick they almost never use in this show. Sam decides to say the Lord's name in Latin to try and get the demon to flinch, and the flight attendant Amanda doesn't react at all, so it's not her, but the co-pilot comes out of the bathroom at the same time, and he does flinch. So with 15 minutes left of the flight before it's supposed to crash, the boys ask Amanda to help them to get the co-pilot out of the cockpit. And these boys truly have pretty privilege. Like, they just show up and they ask people to do wild things. They're like, it's for your safety. There's monsters. And people go, I don't believe you, but you know what? Why not? She gets the like co-pilot to come to the back. The boys like clock him in the jaw and they pin him down, and they start like a 2-part ritual, taping him with duct tape and throwing like holy water on this demon. The demon then rips off the duct tape and yells, I know what happened to your girlfriend, at Sam. And they finish part 1 of the exorcism, but at that point the black particles all like leave this man's body and go into the vent, and the entire plane is now possessed, and it like jolts, and Sam drops the book and it goes sliding down the corridor as the plane starts to go into like a full free fall. So we cut back and forth between Dean in the back screaming like a child, Sam in the middle of the plane trying to speak in Latin and like exorcise a plane from being possessed, and then bad CGI shots of the plane from the outside just going straight into free fall. Sam completes it, and at the exact same time the plane gets like shot by like a lightning bolt, I guess, and so the plane like rights itself and everyone is safe and stabilized. We end with like a beautiful shot of the boys sitting on the Impala outside of the airport, and Sam is sad slash angry that the demon seems to know stuff about Jess. Dean says that they can read minds and lie and are bisexual and eat hot chip. This time the boys are trying to call John's phone, and instead of being out of service they actually get a voicemail, and it says to call Dean at like a very specific number, which according to the internet used to be a real number and is now a sex phone line. So call that at your own risk. Season 1, episode 5, Bloody Mary. I would put this in the middle ground of if you should watch it or not. I think it's fun because we get to find out more about like Sam's weird dreams. But that's kind of it. So we start with the victim POV. There's a bunch of little girls playing truth or dare. This girl has to go into the bathroom and say Bloody Mary 3 times into the mirror. As she does, she's like really scared, but nothing happens, and her friends like start slamming on the door screaming. We see her dad like come out and tell the girls to calm down, and as he's going back to his room, there's like a classic ghost girl in like the mirror behind him and the window reflection behind him. And as he's like walking back to his bedroom, she's just like always kind of there watching. So he like looks in the mirror and has a bunch of like weird veins start to appear in his face, and the door locks, and the older sister comes home and she goes upstairs and a giant puddle of blood is outside. And so for some context, the family, their last names are the Shoemakers, the dad, the older sister, the younger daughter. So Sammy has a nightmare about Jess in the car, and Dean says sooner or later we have to talk about this, which is funny because all they do is not talk, fight monsters, and then talk. But the boys like bribed the morgue attendant so that they could see like Mr. Shoemaker's body, and his eyes were fully liquefied in his skull. They go talk to the daughters, but they accidentally show up during the funeral reception. Because Bloody Mary is like a common ghost story that never comes true, the boys are thinking that this town could be like where the legend began or some other weird stuff. Also, usually it's the person who says Bloody Mary who dies, and in this case it was like her father. And then one of the older sister's friends comes up to the boys. Her name is, I think, Charlie. She like confronts them as they're like checking out the bathroom and being weird, and so then she gives them her phone number, and you're like, girl, What is this pretty privilege? Like, don't give random men your phone number. While she's on the phone with a friend, that friend does a Bloody Mary prank on her, and so she starts freaking out and hangs up. The friend who did the prank, I think her name is Jill, then starts seeing Bloody Mary and all these like reflections as she's washing her face. Her reflection just starts to stare at her, and she starts crying blood, and the reflection says, "You killed that boy." And Jill just falls over choking and dies. And so the boys do some research, and there seems to be no like recorded deaths in this town about like a woman named Mary, specifically like in front of any weird mirrors. And so they get a call from Charlie. She helps them sneak into Jill's room to like get more evidence, and somehow this like night vision mode on like an old 2005 camcorder can pick up on ectoplasm. And so they take down the mirror that like Jill died in front of. On the back, with like a black light, there's a handprint and the name Gary. Gary is the name of an 8-year-old boy who was killed in a hit and run about 2 years ago. And Charlie says that the car described does match what Jill's car was. And looking more into the shoemaker's history, the mother had died on like an OD on sleeping pills. It seems that Mary blames the husband for her death, and obviously not like the daughter who said Bloody Mary. Dean then does a nationwide search for women named Mary, and they head to Fort Wayne, Indiana to talk to a detective about a case 35 years ago. I don't know. It seems that this woman named Mary lived alone, and there was a bloody handprint and a name that was written like next to her, and it was TRE in her own blood. Supposedly there was some kind of surgeon in town named Trevor. Her eyes were personally cut out like surgically, which is why these like victims keep having their eyes like liquefied. So the boys decide to like hunt down her mirror to destroy it, thinking that that would be like what breaks this curse. The shoemaker's daughter and Charlie are at school, and Donna Shoemaker gets like really pissed off, and so she says Bloody Mary a bunch, saying like this isn't real. Charlie starts like to freak out, and she sees like a reflection in like her teacher's glasses or on her like little makeup compact. So she like runs out of school, and she calls Sam and Dean in a panic, and they like bring her to their motel room where they've like covered up all the windows and all the reflections. And she explains that she had like this really shitty boyfriend who like scared her, and so she said that she wanted to leave him and he threatened to kill himself, and when she did leave, he did die. And so now she's worried that Bloody Mary is like coming for her. So Sam thinks that Bloody Mary can like travel through all these mirrors, and so they kind of have to like bait her to come to her original one, and that's where they can kill her. And so he offers to be bait because he feels guilty for Jess's death. Dean tries to give Sam some tough love about how it wasn't his fault, and Sam says that he doesn't blame Dean, but he still should have warned Jess. And it seems that Sam's not telling Dean everything, and sometimes you need a secret, and that won't bait Mary if he tells him the truth. And so they break into the antique store and they find the mirror. Sam says Bloody Mary a bunch of times, and the cops show up. So Dean has to go deal with that. Sam's reflection starts to like cry blood, and he starts choking. Side note, I think the like lighting in these early seasons are so good, like the mood lighting and like the creepy antique shop with all these mirrors. I do recommend like watching it just for the aesthetic. Dean like punches a cop and he goes back to run to Sam, but we find out from the mirror that Sam was having nightmares of Jess dying in this exact fashion for like months before he even like went on this case with Dean, and he still left her. And so that's why he feels very guilty for her death. Then the boys start to walk out of the shop when it's like shattered, and the ghost just climbs out of the mirror frame. She like walks on the broken shards, and then Dean starts crying blood. And when both of the boys are on the ground and like dying, Dean somehow reaches another mirror and like flips it, faces it towards her. And so Mary starts blaming herself for killing all of these people, and she like melts into a puddle. With all the mirrors broken around them, Dean makes a joke about how they probably have like 600 years of bad luck. And he's like not wrong. He's actually like not wrong at all. They drive Charlie home, and Sam tells her it wasn't your fault. It was probably nothing like you could have done. And we see like Dean driving the two of them off with some really bad CGI. When he asks Sam for the truth, Sam says that he would die for Dean, which he will, but he needs to keep his own secret sometimes. I guess we will address Sam having visions later on in season 1. Season 1, episode 6, Skin. I would put this in the middle ground. I think this has some really fun like body horror. Even though I don't really like doppelganger stuff and like who's the real one, I do think the effects in this episode are really fun. Victim POV. We see like a SWAT team entering a dark house to save a young woman who's like tied to a chair and all bloodied. and this torturer has like a big knife and almost sneaks out the window, but is like stopped when the SWAT team breaks in. And as they turn around, we see it, and it's Dean. Probably wonder how he got here. Let's go back a week and we'll catch you up. Dean is making fun of Sam for keeping in touch with his college friends, and Sam like opens an email from his friend Rebecca, who says that her brother Zach is like charged with like killing his own girlfriend. The cops have DNA and fingerprints and witnesses, and Dean doesn't want to go because this doesn't sound like a monster case, but Sam does. And so they go talk to Rebecca, and they find out that there's like video footage of Zach like coming home at 10:30 and killing her, which doesn't make sense because he was with Rebecca until midnight. And there's like no way he could be in two places at once, right? The boys check out the crime scene and figure out that the girl probably just like let him in, like it wasn't an intruder because nothing was broken. And also that about a week before all this happened, someone had broken into Zach's house and only stolen like one set of his clothes, which was odd. We then see Zach sitting in a car outside of some like businessman's house, and his like hot wife kisses him goodbye, and Zach's eyes switch to like a really weird white, with like a prominent black pupil. The man then comes home later in the day, and his wife is like all beat up and crying and asking him to stop. And then a doppelganger comes up behind him and like hits him in the back of the head. Sam and Dean are looking over the videos of Zach that Rebecca had stolen, and it seems that he came home at 10 and the murder was at 10:30. And on the camera, Sam sees a flash of like the weird white eyes. And so the next morning they go back to Zach's house because they actually never see the person who killed the girlfriend on camera leaving. They just see Zach actually showing up again. They find like blood on a light pole outside, and as an ambulance goes by, we like find out about the second case where this man is yelling like, "I didn't do it." And so the boys think it could be some kind of shapeshifter, but the blood marks like disappear behind the house, like near like a sewer grate. They head down and they find like just a pile of gross skin and goop. It seems that like the shapeshifter like sloughs off all of its disguise like a lizard, and so the lore is that you can kill a shapeshifter with like a silver bullet to the heart. The boys are exploring the sewers. The shapeshifter appears like right behind Dean and like elbows him straight into the wall of the sewers. Sam like tries to shoot and like misses and like runs after it, and the shapeshifter gets away. And so the boys get back up to like ground level and they decide to split up, which is such a great idea when it's a doppelganger episode, right? And they don't find the doppelganger. As the boys are walking back to the car, Dean asks Sam for like the car keys, which like prompts Sam to be a little suspicious. Sam like tests him and asks Dean about the shapeshifter that their dad killed in San Antonio. And Dean's like, "No, you're thinking about the thought projection in Austin." And then Sam throws him the keys, and Dean catches them with his like left arm, which is the one that was like all messed up from being hit in the sewers. And so Sam realizes this must be the doppelganger, but he hesitates and he gets hit in the back of the head with a crowbar. The boys are then tied up in the sewers. It's fun because the shapeshifter can access all of Dean's memories, and it's so messy. Shapeshifter Dean says that like Dean was really pissed at Sam for like leaving him, and he's like annoyed that he got to go off to college and that Dean had to stay behind, and that Dean has abandonment issues, and both Sam and John just like kept leaving him. The shapeshifter then heads over to Rebecca's to talk, and it actually just fully tells her the truth about the shapeshifter and how it must be hard to be the monster and like so hideous and hiding and hated, but it just like learned to evolve to be someone else. But even pretty privilege isn't enough when you're a shitty guy, and so this like shapeshifter tries to like sleep with Rebecca and she rejects him, and so he starts beating her up, and this is how we got to the beginning of the episode. Shapeshifter Dean then throws down the knife at the SWAT team, who starts shooting. As he gets back to the sewers, he like takes off his shirt, and we get this like really gross scene of him like ripping the skin off. And so the boys had like already escaped from the sewers, and as they're running by, there's like a sketch of Dean's face on the news. But they have no weapons, and they realize that the shapeshifter probably drove Baby to Rebecca's house, so they have to like stop by where all the cops are. Sam gets arrested and Dean runs. The next day, Dean goes down into the sewers and he finds Rebecca all tied up. We see Sam like drinking a beer at Rebecca's place, and then he gets knocked out by the shapeshifter. But it's actually shapeshifter Dean, and the pile of skin and blood that was like in the sewers were just like a red herring. And so shapeshifter Dean starts the like villain monologue, and it gives Sam enough time to like break free and escape. And then we get a cool fight scene, and then Dean comes in and fully shoots himself in the chest, which might have been cathartic, and he steals back the Samulet, which I know we haven't talked about yet and like will come up far in the future. But yeah, that's the end of the episode. Dean gets blamed for the original murder, and so Zach gets to come out of jail. Episode 1.7, Hookman. So I think this is the first episode you can just like fully skip. Like I don't think it's interesting or like worth it. Victim POV. We see a prudish sorority girl named Lori borrowing a shirt from her like sluttier sorority sister as she's like going on a date with some guy named Rich. We see them like sitting in his car like under a bridge. Her dad is like trying to call her and Lori doesn't pick up, and Rich tries to stick his hand under her shirt when she stops him. We then see outside the car a man with like a hook for a hand slowly walking out of the forest, and he's like scratching some signs. Rich tries to get out of the car to like see what's going on when we see this like kind of cool shot of just like a scratch appearing on the side of the car. The tires pop, the back window is broken, and Rich is now missing. Lori locks the car and she's trying to start it when she hears scratching and like a thud on the roof of the car, so she tries to like open the door and make a run for it, but as she turns around she sees Rich is tied up from the bridge above right over the car with like a slash going down across his chest. Cutting back to the boys, they still can't seem to find a trail about like where John's gone. They show up at this case and they like pretend that they're frat brothers from like another state, and they find out from some kid all dressed in purple that Lori is the Reverend's daughter. So the boys head to church, and in the middle of service Sam and Lori like lock eyes. The boys do some research in the library, and it seems that in 1962 there was some preacher who got really pissed off about like the red light district in town and decided to kill 13 prostitutes and hang them from the bridge, and this man also had a hook hand. So like pretty straightforward case if you ask me. Lori goes back to her room at the sorority that night, and she like sees a scratch mark on the wall, but like her roommate's just like asleep. And so Lori goes to bed. She leaves the door open and we see like a weird dark figure standing behind the door. And so the next morning her roommate is just dead, and we see scratched in the wall in blood is the message, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" And there's this like weird symbol that was on the hook hand that we saw earlier. The boys think that the Hookman is latching onto Lori's dad, and that instead of trying to save the soul of the entire town, it's now the Reverend just trying to save his daughter's soul. Sam is supposed to keep an eye on her, and Dean sadly has to go and dig up all the bones in the unmarked graves nearby. This is the first time we see the boys like digging up a bunch of bones, because I guess if you like salt and burn them, that will like destroy the connection the ghost has to the real world. And this will not be the last time that they do this. Sam walks by Lori's house and we see her yelling at her dad because I guess he's having an affair with some woman in his congregation who says that she's going to divorce her husband. Lori like runs out, meets Sam, and they like start connecting on feeling cursed and everyone they know dying. And then this girl just starts making out with Sam. Her dad yells at her to like come inside, and she yells back no, at which point we see the Hookman just like appear behind her father and just stab him through the chest with the hook. So Sam then tries to shoot the ghost with his shotgun full of rock salt, which doesn't like get rid of the ghost, it just like slows them down. So the boys think that the ghost must be connected to something other than their bones, and they can't find the hook, and we find out that all that silver has been like melted down and reforged. And so Lori's crying in the church about avenging angels and how she should be punished, and so the Hookman comes for her, and then Sam protects her, and then we find out the problem. Lori has a like silver cross necklace that is made of the silver that the Hookman had. And so they just burn the necklace and it melts the ghost, and that's the case. Episode 1.8, Bugs. Fully just skip this episode. It's not good. I've only seen it twice now because I personally don't like bugs, but like also it's just not a good episode in terms of like writing and CGI and everything. We open in a suburban neighborhood. It's like in construction, and we see one man like slap a mosquito while another man like hears a weird rumbling, and he like falls into a hole and breaks his ankle, and there are bugs everywhere. By the time another man like comes over to check on him, he's like pale and his eyes are like bright red. There's blood coming out of his nose, but all the bugs are gone, which is weird. We see Sam and Dean are just making money like playing poker. The news thinks that it could be like mad cow disease or something. And then we find out that Dean watches Oprah and that the dead guy's like brain was liquid within an hour. And they check out the work site. They find like 10 dried up beetles at the bottom of this hole, and they decide to stop by an open house in the neighborhood for like the one house that's actually built. Dean gets a little freaked out about the ideas of like living in the suburbs because he hasn't lived in a real house since he was like 4 years old. Also, forgot about this note. The like realtor, she like comes up to them, and this is the first time in the show where we see like a random side character imply that the brothers are actually dating and like gay men. Why? Like, why does this show ship Wincest more than anything else? It's wild. Anyways, we're introduced to like the developer of the neighborhood and his wife and his kids. Here's just a random stock image of like a family. We find out the boy really likes bugs, and so Sam then talks to him about like their joint daddy issues of being misunderstood. The dad comes back and yells at his son for having his tarantula out at this open house, which like I kind of understand. And then Sam and Dean argue about like what it was like growing up with John. The boys like decide to squat in an empty house overnight, and we see the realtor at her house as the TV is talking about how there's like a rise in West Nile virus in town, which is odd. There's a naked lady in the shower and then a bunch of bad CGI spiders everywhere. The boys decide to break into the crime scene of the realtor's house. They do not care about fingerprints or stepping on evidence or anything. They think it could be like the realtor's son Matt, and so they go to confront him, and in the woods he shows them like this big pile of worms, and Dean pulls out a bunch of skeletons from an unmarked grave. Sam tells the kid that life gets better when you leave home, and Dean is annoyed and says that the kid should stick with his family. Alright, boys. So at one point, Sam feels like he was like a disappointment to his father, and Dean is like, nah, man, like John used to drive by to check in on you. And like we found out in another episode that John was like so proud of Sam for going to college. So back to the skeletons, they show them to some professor, and he says they're 170 years old and probably are Native American. Yeah, and so they go talk to like the tribe, and they're like, oh yeah, here's all of our traumatic lore. So I guess the American cavalry tried to relocate them, and instead they fought. On the night of the equinox, the cavalry snuck into the village and did all their classic shitty colonizer stuff, and by the sixth night everyone in town was dead. In the chief's dying breath, he cursed the white man and said nature will rise up and protect the valley, and on the sixth night everyone will die. Of course, that's this night. The boys can't seem to break the curse, so they just need to try and get this white family out of there. They rush over to the house, and the dad won't listen, and at that point the swarm of bugs has already arrived. So they try and cover all the gaps in the windows, and the power and the signal go out, and then the fireplace like breaks and a bunch of like bees fly in. Everyone runs upstairs to the attic, but there's like termites like eating away at all the wood, and that like opens a skylight to let the bees come into the attic where everyone is hiding. And so Dean uses bug spray and like a lighter to create like a flamethrower, and it immediately goes out. But I guess they somehow survived the night like immediately. I don't know. What is funny is, according to Reddit, they used actual bees in this episode, and they like stung the actors, but then in the edit they realized that you couldn't see them, so that's why they had to CGI in like a bunch of really bad bees. So that sucks for them. But yeah, next day the family moves out, and it's a financial disaster. But the dad and son get along now, so I guess everything's fine. Also, the boy just fully throws away his bug collection. I'm like, I get you have trauma, but like, damn, like this doesn't happen all the time. The boys talk about finding John, and then, okay, I'm gonna put this in here. I know I didn't want to go into too many fan theories, but I saw one like in the last like year. People were like, what if Dean had actually killed John like before the first episode? And so he's just like putting up this charade in all of his grief of like, I need to find my brother, and I'm gonna have this whole thing about how we have to go find our dad and how we'll never find him, but at least then I'll have my brother back. That's so fucked up. Let's go to episode 1.9, Home. I do recommend this episode. It has a lot of Winchester lore, and I guess you'll see why really quickly. We open in Lawrence, Kansas. A blonde mom is unpacking a wedding photo and she starts crying. Her little girl says that there's a monster in her closet. There's nothing there, but they like put a chair in front of the door to like block it. The mom then hears some scuffling as she goes to check the basement for rats, and there she finds a really hot picture of John Winchester. The daughter is like sitting up in her bed as the chair like starts to slowly be like moved away from the door. And then we see a shot from like outside of this blonde woman like screaming in the upstairs window. Sam wakes up. It's another one of his nightmares. He starts like immediately drawing the tree that he saw in the vision. Sam realizes that this must be their like old house in Lawrence. Dean gets like all like vulnerable and he says that he always promised himself that he would never go back there, but like they need to go save this woman. And so the boys walk into this house and they like actually tell the truth for once. So we get like the mom's backstory of like how she's a widow, just moved in, like no job, new house, all that kind of stuff. It seems like the house is bad. Like the lights are flickering all the time. She hears scratching in the walls, which is like all signs of like ghosts and stuff. And we do know that someone died here. But the boys are freaking out and Dean's like, oh no, maybe Sam's visions are true. They find out about this like fire figure and Sam thinks that this might have been the thing that killed both Jess and Mary. The boys start getting like all choked up about this case and Dean decides to go call his daddy in private and I just like, he's so sensitive. The boys then pretend to be like cops and start asking different people about the Winchester like quote unquote disappearances. We find out that John was a Marine and stubborn and hates to lose and like truly was in a bad place. Also, someone in town states that John started going to like a palm reader named Missouri Mosley. When they show up, she knows Sam and Dean are themselves and not just random cops. She then holds Sam's hand and we find out that she can read minds. We cut back to the house. There's like a plumber there and like a monkey symbol toy starts acting up. The guy like fully disconnects the disposal and then the monkey stops. The man like sticks his arm in and, you know, classic horror movie, his arm is now gone. Later on, we see the mom like running upstairs to do something and the little boy is just like in his playpen in the living room and the hinges of the gate just fully get like unscrewed and falls down and so the toddler just like walks out and I guess he just loves juice and so he walks up to the fridge that's open, climbs in and it closes and latches behind him. Not a good house, you guys. Not a good house. Thankfully, the mom is like freaking out and she sees this like puddle of like white liquid at the bottom of the fridge and she opens it and it's like the kid sitting there with the spilled milk and he's totally fine. And so Sam, Dean, and Missouri all show up and the mom, Jenny, is like all frazzled. A lot of these names are repeated throughout the episodes. Like there's like 2 Mikes, there's a couple Charlies, there's a couple Jennys. I don't know. Also, some of these actors, like I think Donna Shoemaker, the older sister in another episode, comes back like 6 seasons from now as like a completely different one, and I really love that actually. There's just so many side characters, so you might as well just reuse good actors. But anyways, Missouri tells the mom that they can help, which is true, and they check out Sam's old nursery, and Missouri says that the fire thing is not the same like ghost that seems to be like messing with the house. She also says that the thing that killed Mary was like a real evil and like those leave some kind of wound on the home and like wounds can get infected and so it seems that other creatures are now here, the fire thing and the other weird ghost thing. So they make little bundles of herbs to like put into the walls, protect the house with crossroad dirt, which is important later on. They get the mom and the kids to leave for a few hours to go see a movie or something, but then the house decides to fight back. And so Sam gets choked out by a lamp cord, Missouri gets pinned against the wall by a cabinet, and Dean gets a drawer full of knives thrown at him. Dean somehow blocks the knives with the table, and then he saves Sam by throwing like a bundle at the wall and it explodes near him. And so Sam still has like a bad feeling about this, but they all think it might be gone. And so the mom comes back and they all leave. Sam realizes that he can tell the future, and so then they're like sitting outside and the exact same vision of her like screaming in the upstairs window happens again. The fire thing, which is just like a person in a green screen suit, sorry, is like walking slowly out of the closet. Sam hands the little brother to the sister and, to quote John, says, "Take your brother outside as fast as you can and don't look back." He was 6 months old. He doesn't know that. Anyways, Dean then breaks into the house and the fire thing turns into their like mom. Like it's Mary Winchester, you guys. She then somehow banishes the other ghost thing and like destroys her spirit in the process. I don't know. Normally every episode ends with like the boys just like driving off, but in this one there's a bonus scene And we get to see like Missouri getting back to her place, and she says, "That boy," meaning Sam, has such powerful abilities. Do you think that he can't sense his own father? And then we see John just sitting on the couch, and he's like all sad about Mary's ghost being gone, and Missouri is just disappointed that he's a freaking absent father and won't talk to his sons. And so I guess for some cryptic reason he can't talk. Season 1, Episode 10, Asylum. I think you can skip this episode. It's not that interesting. Two cops go to check out like an old asylum because they think a bunch of teens are there. Supposedly, like, if you spend the night, it will drive you insane. And so the two cops split up, and the older one finds like these three kids like hiding in a corner. The newbie cop, like his like flashlight flickers, and then we cut to both of them outside, and the newbie's like acting weird and has a nosebleed. And then he goes home and he shoots his wife, and then he kills himself. That's it. Back to the boys. They're calling everyone they know to try and like find John. Dean does get like a text of some weird coordinates from an unknown number. And so the boys like break into the asylum during the day, and they check out the south wing where in 1972 three kids broke in and only one of them survived. And he says that another one just like freaked out and started shooting. Sam is just annoyed that like John sent them on yet another like trip and he's not there. And Dean just says that like they have to follow their dad's orders, which reminds me personally, later seasons, spoiler alert I guess, of how the angels talk about God being gone, and they're just like, just gotta keep going, business as usual. The implications. But anyways, Sam goes to see like the son of like the old chief of the asylum, and he tries to like psychoanalyze Sam. We find out that the South Wing had riots of insane asylum patients, and it was bloody and gory. This like guy who was like in charge, his name is Ellicott, was like never found. The boys are like, got it, it's angry ghosts, violent deaths, all that kind of stuff. And then we see this like couple breaking in. Their names are Kat and Gavin. The girl is too scared, and so they decide to split up, which is stupid. And so he goes ahead, his flashlight turns off, and he sees a girl who just starts making out with him. But then his girlfriend starts calling his name. Gavin opens his eyes and realizes that this girl is like actually a corpse slash ghost thing. And then Sam and Dean have also come back to the asylum that night, and their EMF reader and camcorder are like picking up on spirits everywhere. And so Sam runs into like a ghost girl who has like something in her eye, and so she's like slowly walking towards them, and Dean still like panics and like shoots her with rock salt, and she disappears. The boys find Kat, and she doesn't want to leave Gavin behind, so she doesn't leave. Sam then finds him, and he explains that the ghost girl kissed him and was like trying to whisper something to him. Dean and Kat are still walking around, and a ghost like drags her into one of the rooms. She's all freaked out, and then Sam says that she needs to like listen to it, at which point the door unlocks. I need to stop talking about ghosts. There's so many weird noises today, and both my roommates are gone, and we do have a ghost in this apartment. I'm treating your kind with respect. It's not my fault if the show didn't. Okay. So I'm just going to read off my computer really quick because this is not interesting. Dean finds Ellicott's journals, and then on a walkie-talkie calls Sam for help, and so Sam leaves his gun with Kat and Gavin because the doors are locked. Sam heads down to the boiler room where Ellicott grabs him to make him better, and then real Dean heads down to the basement. He's telling Sam about how like the rage therapy on like the patients made them all riot. Sam is acting weird and sus. So Dean then finds the secret room. Sam shoots him with his like rock salt gun, and Dean goes flying through the wall. Sam then pins him to the ground and is ranting about how they aren't finding John, and he's getting pissed off. So Dean hands his like actual gun to Sam and tells him to shoot him. Sam fully pulls the trigger. The gun isn't loaded. Dean kicks it out of his hand. Dean then socks him in the face, and Sam is unconscious, which, for your knowledge, any amount of time passed out is brain damage, and you should get that checked out. These boys are unconscious so much, it's really bad for them. Dean finds the mummified Ellicott, but then the ghost Ellicott starts like shocking his brain or something. Dean then throws the lights, and somehow the ghost turns to carbon. The boys end up back at the motel, and Sam picks up Dean's phone and says, "Dad?" And that's it. That's the Asylum episode. It's not good. Don't recommend. Sorry, I just had to take a little break. Do you need a break? That's fine. Pause the video. I won't mind. Okay, we're good? Cool. Out of 22 episodes, we're on episode 11, so we're in it for the long haul still. Episode 1.11, Scarecrow. I highly recommend this episode. I think it's really fun. It has some like weird cult stuff. We meet an important side character. There's like good aesthetics. There's good drama between the Winchester brothers. Like, I just highly recommend. It's a fun one. So, a year ago, there's a young couple walking back to their car, escorted by an older couple and their daughter. They have homemade pie, and the car is like filled up with gas. The guy has some like weird, cool tattoo on his arm, which will be relevant. And the family just like waves this couple off as they like drive down the road. They're told to like turn down an orchard road to leave town. It seems like their car like broke down not long ago. After not a long time, their car breaks down again and their phones are dead, and so they just decide to walk off into the orchard. As they're walking down between these trees, they find like a weird, creepy scarecrow. Something causes them to split off, and the girl is running when suddenly she trips on something, and when she looks, it's the dead body of her boyfriend with his like face fully ripped off. We then hear her scream, and then we see the like scarecrow post is empty and untied. Creepy. But let's check in on our Winchesters. So John is like on the phone with Sam last we left off. He won't tell him where he is, but that the thing that killed Mary was a demon. He also says that Sam can't help and that he needs to stop trying to find John. And John gives them like a list of all these names, and they're all a bunch of couples that have gone missing on road trips through this specific part of Indiana, all during the second week of April. It is now the second week of April. Sam pulls over and says that they should just go straight to California because like that's where the payphone that John used to call them was from. Dean says no and that they need to follow orders, and Sam is pissed and he says that he doesn't understand Dean's blind faith in his father, which like angel implications for like seasons 4 through like 8 or whatever, but we'll get to that. And so Sam is just like shitty to Dean, and he says that Dean wouldn't understand because he was 4 years old when Mary died, but like Jess just died like 6 months ago. And so he like grabs his stuff and he just like walks off. So the next day, Dean like pulls up into like the small town that John sent them to. He gives some like fake name about some like drummer of Led Zeppelin, and the guy at the diner is like, that's weird, like I know that name. And so like Dean asks about like all these missing people, and the diner guy, his name is Scotty, says that he's never seen them. Dean then goes to the gas station that we saw at the beginning of this episode, and the family from the opening says that they do remember this last couple, and they send Dean towards the orchard. Dean, in the middle of the day, is like walking through and he finds the like creepy scarecrow, and he does call it Fugly because it is 2005. So Dean also notices like the scarecrow is holding like a weird sickle, and on its arm is the tattoo of the most recent guy who's missing. So Dean heads back to the gas station, and there he meets Emily, the like person who we assumed was the daughter earlier. I guess she came to town when she was 13 because both of her parents died in a car crash, and the older couple is actually her aunt and uncle. Emily explains that it's like a perfect little town, and like everywhere else is like affected by like droughts and things, and they're always blessed. Dean notices another young couple getting their car fixed up by her uncle. Let's check in on Sam. Last we saw, grabbed his stuff and just was walking on the road. He finds like a young blonde girl with like a pixie cut sitting on the side of the road. He like taps her on the shoulder, and she obviously doesn't tell him where she's going because he's weird and creepy. Pretty privilege does not win this time. But then a creepy white van pulls up, and she stands up and goes off with him. So later on, Sam is at a bus station, and the next trip to California is the next day at 5 p.m. But then who is at the bus station but this blonde girl, Meg? They start like hitting it off. She's talking about how her family wants her to stay and do the family business, and she like doesn't want to, and that's why she's here. It sounds very oddly familiar. Cute blonde hitting on a Winchester. Gotta look out. But back to Dean. So he was in the orchard. He goes back to the diner. He sees this couple having like one last meal before they leave. Dean tries to get them to leave before nighttime, and he offers to fix their car because he wants them out of town as soon as possible. The sheriff shows up. He gets pissed off at Dean for harassing them and escorts him out of town. By the time Dean is able to like leave and come back, he stops by the orchard and he finds this couple running. They're being chased by the Scarecrow and Dean shoots it. The bullet doesn't do anything, it just goes straight through it, but they're able to escape. Dean then calls Sam and he's explaining everything about like the free meal at the diner, all the yearly killings, all the good fortune in this town. And so Sam thinks this is probably some kind of like pagan god like ritual. And then the boys have a little heart to heart. And Dean says that Sam's right. He always knew what he wanted, and like he's proud of him for like going after it. And it's just really cute. But it seems like everyone's always proud of Sam, and no one's ever proud of Dean. So Dean heads to the local community college to get more like information on how to kill a god. And yeah, it seems like there's some kind of human sacrifice of one man and one woman to the Scarecrow that's like posted near like a sacred tree. As Dean leaves, the sheriff actually shows up and hits him on the back of the head, and Dean wakes up like tied up in the basement of this old couple's home with Emily, their own niece. Sam tries to call Dean and he's about to get on this bus and he doesn't pick up. And so Meg gets on the bus and tries to convince Sam to come with her, and he doesn't. Dean and Emily are just like talking about this like first tree that like the pilgrims brought with them, and they're tied up and then left for the Scarecrow to kill, but of course Sam shows up, frees them. They like are trying to run, but all the townsfolk are like there with guns, like forcing them to stay. And then the Scarecrow stabs Emily's uncle. All right. And then he takes Emily's kind of bitchy aunt as well and just like drags her away. So it got its sacrifice for the year. The next morning, when everything's like safe and calmed down, the trio of Sam and Dean and Emily go back to the sacred tree, and Emily has the chance to like set it on fire. And so then Emily just gets on a bus to Boston. Dean asks Sam where he should drop him off, and Sammy says, Jess and Mom are gone, Dad is who knows where, you and me, we're all that's left. Which is like kind of true. Like they pick up a lot of like friends along the way. But down at the core of it, all they have is each other. We end the episode with Meg in yet another van with a creepy guy. And so she tells him to pull over because she has to make a phone call. And she takes out this like weird chalice and then goes over and slits this man's throat. The goblet fills with blood and it starts bubbling, and she starts having a conversation with it. We only hear her side of the conversation, but she says something about how she could have stopped Sam or both of them. And then there's some bubbling and she just agrees with, I guess, her father. Very fun twist. Love Meg. Obviously still alive, didn't hook up with Sam. And we'll go on to episode 1.12, Faith, which is another cult episode, which I really like this one. The vibes on this one, immaculate. It's a good one. Also, it's the first time we meet this like new type of creature that does come up a lot in like way later seasons. So we start with the boys. They're like on another case and we're just seeing them at the end. I guess they have these like 100,000-volt tasers and they're running through an abandoned basement. They're like walking up to a cabinet that like makes a weird noise, and they open it and there's a little boy and a little girl. I guess they're like hiding from this monster. They like usher them to run up the stairs, and as Sam is following them, a hand like grabs him and he falls. Dean then shoots his monster with a taser and misses. Sam is able to get away and like get the kids to safety. And so Dean falls into like a puddle, but he tases the monster, but because they're both in the water, they both like get the electric shock. Which reminded me a lot of a certain like Grey's Anatomy episode. Speaking of hospitals, that's where we then find Sam. He's talking to the cops and then a doctor, and it seems that Dean's heart was so badly damaged that he has less than a month to live. Obviously, Sam is very distraught, and the doctors just say they can't work miracles. Dean looks rough, and he tells Sam that he better take good care of baby or else he'll haunt him. Sam is like desperate and calling John, but he's not picking up. He's doing a bunch of research on like magic and supernatural remedies. Dean then decides to check himself out of the hospital, and they have some kind of lead on a guy in Nebraska. Roy LaGrange is some kind of faith healer, and he has a really big congregation of like sick people who come to get healed. There is a protester outside who's saying that Roy's work is fake. There's an important line where he asks Dean, how can you know that evil is out there but not good? And Dean says, because I've seen what evil does to good people. So the boys get interrupted by a pretty lady named Layla. The boys sit in the second row behind Layla. Roy is giving a sermon, and there's like some kind of weird cross on his table. Also, Roy is blind, and his wife is up there like kind of not directing him, but like pointing him towards the audience. Roy also mentions that the Lord is the one who picks who gets healed. Dean makes some kind of snarky comment, and Roy hears him. So Dean is the one who gets pulled up on stage. And he's like trying to protest because like this is his first time. A lot of these people have come here before. Roy's wife helps Dean up onto the stage, and everyone else prays, and Dean faints. When he comes to, we see some kind of like blurry, gray, wrinkled man standing behind Roy, and then we cut back to the hospital where they're checking out Dean's heart, and he sounds perfectly fine. Like he's fully healed. But they do overhear a case about another 27-year-old man who just had a heart attack at the exact same time that Dean was healed, which is suspicious. That's weird. So Sam goes off to learn about the guy who died, and it seems that he was running away from something that only he could see, and that the clock stopped at the exact moment he died. Dean at the same time goes to talk to the Lagranges. It seems that Roy suddenly became blind and only had a month to live because he had some kind of like brain cancer. And so he prayed, and now here he is alive. And so the reason he picked Dean was because he was a young man with an important job to do that wasn't finished. And you're like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Greater destiny for these Winchester boys. As Dean is walking out, he runs into Layla and her mom, and it seems that they go to the Lagranges, and they've been going for a long time. They've gone to like the last 6 services hoping that they get picked because Layla has an inoperable brain tumor. And so the boys do some research, and they realize that there has to be some way that Roy is in charge of a Reaper, like, you know, Grim Reaper. Somehow it's trading one life for another. And so the lore about Reapers is 1, they stop time, and 2, you can only see them if they're coming for you. Dean says that they should just kill Roy, but Sam says no, that's like a human being. Like literally that is what Roy is doing. He's just killing one person, but like saving another, but whatever. And so the boys realize they also can't kill a Reaper. At the next service, Sam like breaks into the Lagrange's houses while Dean is like going back to the tent. Sam finds like a little black notebook with all these like newspaper clippings of all these people who have died. Some of them are gay or worked at abortion clinics, and so the last paper is about the protester outside. Dean's job is to try and like stop the next person from getting healed. However, this is the time that Roy decides to pick Layla. Dean is like very conflicted. She obviously seems like a good person and she shouldn't die, but also no one should die in her place. So he tries to get her to stop. Obviously, she still goes up. Sam is outside and he sees the protester like running around screaming. Dean then yells fire, and like the entire ceremony's ended, and Roy gets escorted out, and Dean gets banned from coming back. The ceremony's over, and the protester is still running around screaming. So obviously Roy isn't behind all of this. Dean actually finds Roy's wife behind the like altar praying, and she has like a weird amulet necklace that matches that cross that was on the table. And so when she's interrupted, the Reaper then leaves the protester alone. The wife seems pissed and disappointed in Dean because obviously they like promised to heal Layla, but they had already healed him. And so the boys have to come back that evening to destroy everything before someone else dies. And so during this time, Dean is like running around avoiding the troopers who banned him from going to bother the Lagranges again. Sam then finds the altar with a picture of Dean with his like face X'd out, and the wife finds him and locks him in the basement. And they actually do start healing Layla. So Dean starts laying down on the ground dying because the Reaper shows up. However, Sam somehow breaks out of this basement, and he's like able to break Sue Ann Lagrange, like her necklace, and that breaks the control she has on the Reaper, who then decides to kill her as revenge for like controlling it. And so the next day, Layla comes over, and obviously she wasn't healed, but she comes to talk to Dean, and he says that he'll pray for her, and she says that's miracle enough. Episode 113, Route 666. I highly recommend this episode. It's a wild one. I don't know if fun is the right word. Yeah, Supernatural, you know, the show with the racist ghost truck, and they go, what? That's this one, okay? Buckle in. We start with a victim POV. There's a black man driving down a road in his little Subaru in Missouri when a giant truck appears behind him and just like crashes into the back of his car, pushing it. He then keeps driving when suddenly the truck just disappears and reappears right in front of him. He swerves to like miss it. He does like a full U-turn to try and get away, but the truck like chases after him. It then crushes the back of his car. He then goes like flying over some gravestones, and the car's flipped. The truck then just disappears. So Dean gets a call from an old friend whose father was the man who we just saw killed. She thinks that it's something that the boys can deal with. Dean knows that she never would have called if she could have avoided it. We find out her name's Cassie. She's gorgeous. Dean says that they met and they dated for a few weeks back when she was finishing college. Sam is pissed because he's like, he lied to Jess for like an entire year Which also, like, what do you mean they were only dating for a year and a half and he was gonna propose? Anyways, it's just like very out of character for Dean to like tell this girl. And so we meet Cassie as she's like talking to the mayor and the head of her newspaper. The mayor is white, the newspaper head is black. She's mixed race. These things matter when there's a racist ghost truck, okay? The newspaper wants to print about how Cassie's dad was the second black man to die of a car accident on the same stretch of road in 3 weeks. The white mayor thinks that they should hold off because the newspaper editor is too close to this. It seems that the newspaper editor was friends with Cassie's dad, and she's also one of the reporters there. Then there's like a scene where Dean and Cassie reconnect, and they don't really say anything, but they like look at each other, and it's very cute. Anyways, it seems that Cassie's dad said that he had been seeing a black truck following him. There was only one set of car tracks where the car crash happened. The other guy who died about 3 weeks ago co-owned the like car dealership that Cassie's dad was in charge of. Same situation. And then Cassie's white mom comes home and she's like all frazzled. She doesn't want to talk to the boys. And the next day we find out that the editor is also dead, also crashed, same part of the road. Cassie then calls the mayor and she's like, yo, why did you not close down this road? That's bad. And then she also straight up asks him, would he have done that if any of the victims were white? And the mayor says, don't you dare talk to me like that. Like, you should talk to your mother. And she's like, what? Sam notices that Dean and Cassie are always looking at each other when the other one thinks they're not looking. And we find out from the locals that there was another string of deaths of black men, like back in the 60s. But it was probably never looked into because, you know, it was the 60s. So Dean thinks this is like a Flying Dutchman situation of ghost ship infused with the spirit of the evil captain. So Dean decides to go talk to Cassie because all of these deaths seem like related to her in some way. And Sam's like, also you should talk about your unfinished romantic business. Dean then admits that they were maybe more involved. Maybe he loved her. Womanizing Dean? Maybe thinking about settling down with someone? Question mark. Dean and Cassie immediately start fighting about like who dumped who. It seems like Dean would always shut down any emotional moments, and then when he actually told her the truth about having to go monster hunting with his dad, she didn't believe him. She thought he was just saying something to get out of it, and so that's why she ended things. But she didn't want to hurt him, and then he didn't want to hurt her, so they start making out and head to the bedroom. We fully like just see them in bed together. Like it's the first like big sex scene of Supernatural. And then afterwards they're like talking about the relationship and how she was the first girl like Dean ever opened up to. Sam interrupts by calling Dean and he says that there was another accident. It's snowing and the mayor got absolutely crushed on the side of the road, but there are no tracks yet again. So here's some like town lore. The mayor bought the house that used to belong to this family called the Dorians. They owned it for 150 years. They also used to own the newspaper that was like for white people only. The Dorian son Cyrus also went missing around the time of those deaths in the 60s, and these new murders started right after the mayor like bulldozed that family home. So Cassie's home when the lights flicker and she hears the revving of the truck outside. Thankfully she's fine and the boys are able to come over and they're just having tea with Cassie and her mom. Cassie's mom says that her dad thought the truck belonged to Cyrus. Cyrus's body was never found, but she knows that he died 40 years ago, and she explains that she dated both Cassie's dad and Cyrus at the same time in the 60s. Eventually, she broke it off with Cyrus, and he became so angry that the string of murders started. Cassie's parents were supposed to get married in a little church, but they decided to elope instead. And then the church on the day of the wedding actually was like set on fire. Sadly, there was a church choir of children singing and they all died. And then after that, there was only one more murder. It seems that Cyrus was in his truck going to kill Cassie's dad and started beating him up, but Cassie's dad fought back and killed Cyrus instead. He then called on his friends, the guy who co-owned the car dealership and the head of the newspaper, and they helped him hide the body. And the white cop at the time, who turned out to be the mayor later on, helped cover up the deaths. Dean and Cassie kiss goodbye. The boys go to the swamp to get the truck, and they like pull it out, and they salt and burn the mummy that was in the truck when the ghost truck shows up. Dean gets into baby and drives off to distract the ghost truck while Sam starts to burn the actual truck, which would cause so much pollution and just take so long. But it's fine. It's a TV show. Dean is just like driving around in circles, and so Sam takes out a map. He calls Cassie to get some info, then calls back Dean. He gives some like really specific instructions, and Dean like drives through like broken ruins of a doorway, and as the truck tries to follow him, it just like disappears and dissipates and is destroyed. Sam had led Dean directly to that like burned down church, and that evil spirits disappear on hallowed grounds. The next day, Cassie and Dean say goodbye. He says that they should like see each other more, like make it less permanent, but she's a realist and she just says goodbye. Episode 1.14, Nightmare. I'd put this in that like middle recommendation area. There's some interesting Winchester lore stuff about like Sam's visions, but I don't think it's like a you have to watch it kind of episode. Victim POV. We see a man pull into his garage, but the door like closes behind him. His car doors lock and the entire garage starts to fill up with like his exhaust. And so he dies of carbon monoxide poisoning. The lights go white and we see that it's just another one of Sam's like premonition dreams. So the boys like hit the road in a rush. Dean thinks it's just a nightmare, but Sam is like sure that it's real. They're a couple hours away, so they're just like driving throughout the night, and by the time they get there, the cops are already there taking the body away. We see the grieving widow and her despondent son, and Sam is just like very upset about why he would have these visions if it doesn't mean that he can like save these people. The boys go to visit the family the next day dressed up as priests. Dean talks to the mom asking about any like ghosts or if they're on burial grounds or anything, and there's nothing weird. Sam then goes talk to the son. His name is Max Miller, and he's the one who found the dead guy. Back at the hotel, the boys are talking when Sam suddenly gets like a terrible headache, and he actually has a vision of Max's uncle like leaning out his window, and it like falls and guillotines him. Pretty gruesome, pretty creative. Okay, so the boys like drive in a hurry to go stop this man from dying. Sam's starting to be worried about getting these visions like during the day, not just at night. And he's also confused why they're all connected to this Miller family. When they get to the uncle's house, they're locked out the front door, so they like run and go up the fire escape. But about halfway through, Dean hears the window like slam shut, and he knows that they're already too late. The boys think it could be like a vengeful spirit or some kind of curse, and Sam makes a joke about how he knows what they have in common. And Dean says that the Winchesters aren't cursed, they just have dark spots. Sorry to break it to you, buddy. I think you were personally picked up by the universe to have a very terrible, horrible, very no good, bad day. Anyways, so the boys go to talk to Max and they ask about his uncle and his dad, and he's just like very sus about it. So then they go and talk to some neighbors, and we find out that the uncle and the dad were like alcoholics and would beat up on this kid, and that his like stepmom would just like stand around and watch. At which point Sam gets a perfectly timed like headache and vision, this time of Max yelling at his stepmom cooking dinner, talking about how she never like intervened. At which point he like telekinetically picks up the knife and like throws it at her, and it goes straight through her eye. The boys are now in the car and they're rushing, and Sam realizes that he has to be connected to Sam for some reason because they're both psychic, and he thinks they're also not that dissimilar, and Max is kind of valid for these 3 deaths, but Dean is like, no, he's a monster, like he's killed multiple people, we have to like put him down, which is funny because didn't they just say this about Roy LaGrange? But Sam does want to just talk to Max and try and get him to stop. The boys break in right as the knife is about to go flying off and hit the stepmom, so they do stop the vision. Max then sees that Dean has a gun and locks the door and like psychically pulls it away from Dean. Max then throws the stepmom off into the wall, so doesn't count, and she's unconscious, so Dean starts to take her upstairs to like rest. She has brain damage. And Sam tries to de-escalate the situation. Him and Max start talking, and we find out that Max has felt helpless his whole life, and his father beat him up for the first time in a long time, and that's when he decided to kill him. We find out that Max's dad like hated him and like blamed him for everything, and the neighbor had mentioned that his mom had died in a car accident, but that's not true. Find out that she actually died in like Max's nursery. There was some kind of fire, and that his dad started drinking to like cope with what he saw. Strong Mary Winchester, Jess, I don't know her last name, energy. Yikes. Sam tells him that they're the same and that the Winchesters are hunting his mom's killer, that Max isn't alone and he should just let everyone go. Max says he still has nightmares of the beatings and that he's sorry, but he has to kill his stepmom, at which point he telekinetically pushes Sam into a closet, locks it by pushing a cabinet in the way. If you're keeping track, I think that should count for like half a point. Max then goes upstairs, throws Dean into the wall, that's a full point, and points a gun at his mom. Dean says that if he wants to kill her, he has to go through Dean first, and then the bullet goes through Dean's head. Dean's dead! Halfway through season 1! What are we gonna do for the rest of the show? It's fine, it's just a vision. Sam freaks out and then somehow telekinetically pushes the cabinet aside. I don't remember if he ever does this again, but that's wild. He then interrupts the fight upstairs before Dean dies. Sam tells Max that he doesn't need to do this, it wouldn't fix anything, and so Max turns the gun on himself and dies. The boys have a little debrief. Sam doesn't understand why this demon would kill just their moms and Jess and wanted Max or Sam for some reason, because why didn't he just steal the babies? Sam asks why Dean isn't worried about him turning dark like Max did, and Dean says it's because Sam has him and that Dean will never let anything bad happen to Sam. Episode 1.15, The Benders. I don't know if I would fully recommend this episode. I put it in the middle ground. It has Most Dangerous Game vibes, so I'm it's fun. You don't have to watch it. We have a kid watching a movie as he hears someone outside. This man throws trash away and then he hears chains as he's walking by parked cars. This man decides to look underneath the car and doesn't see anything, but when he stands up, the chains pull him under the car, and this kid saw everything. A week later, the boys are pretending to be state troopers and they're asking the mom some questions. The kid says that the monster left and made this weird whining growl noise, but he wasn't looking out the window at that point. The boys go to a bar. The cops there say there were signs of a struggle, so it might have just been a normal kidnapping. John in his notebook had put down that this area could be a hunting ground for phantom attackers, just some kind of local folklore about dark figures who snatch people in the middle of the night, because this area has more missing people per capita than the rest of the state. So Sam thinks that they should head home, so he already leaves the bar, and he hears these weird chains and looks under the car, and he just sees a cat. When Dean comes out, Sam is fully missing. The next day, Dean reports Sam is missing. She then looks up Sam and all the police records on Dean. It says that Dean died in St. Louis, and that their birthdays are May 2nd and March 7th, which makes Sam a Taurus and Dean a Pisces. Dean noticed that there's some kind of traffic camera near the bar, and the cop printed out a picture of the RV with some stolen plates. And then the van drives nearby the camera and it makes a weird whining growl sound like the kid explained. Dean is then in the car with this cop, and she tells him that she ran his badge number, and she pulls up a picture of the cop that he's impersonating, and it's a large black man. And somehow Dean's pretty privilege happens again, and he just sweet talks his way into not being arrested. And the cop has a picture with her of her brother who went missing, and so she agrees to first save Sam, which is wild. Let's cut to Sam. He is locked up in a large metal cage of sorts. He tries to break out and he wakes up the guy next to him, and it's Alvin, the guy that went missing at the beginning of the episode. He says that it smells like the countryside and it seems that they're in the middle of nowhere. Sam then asks Alvin about what kind of creatures have him caught, and Alvin's confused because it's just some guys. And he explains that there's a button that they use to open the gate, and they're always wearing dark ponchos and carrying rifles, and they get fed once a day. So Sam decides to try and rip down some of the wiring, and the gate buzzes and Alvin's unlocks. And so he decides to make a run for it, and Sam tells him not to because it's probably a trap. But Alvin runs off into the woods, says that he'll get them help. He finds a knife in the woods and he just keeps running, but he gets lost, and these two men just attack and fully kill him with spears, which feels very gruesome and violent, way worse than guns in this situation. And so the next morning, the cop and Dean find this dirt road, and they think it might be a lead. Dean wants to come with her, but the cop makes him promise to let her take the lead, and as he's shaking her hand, she handcuffs him to the car door. Which I love. She then walks up to the house alone, and we see that RV outside the house. She finds this dirty little girl opening the door. She says that her mother's dead and she doesn't have a dad. And so when the cop asks to come in, she takes out a picture of Sam and she's like, "Hey, do you recognize him?" At which point the little girl goes, "This'll hurt." And then the cop gets hit in the side of the head by a shovel, and we see who we can assume is the little girl's father. Dean is still locked up and is trying to get the car antenna off the hood, but he can not really reach to unlock it. And then we hear the whining growl of the RV coming down the road. The two guys we saw hunting earlier decide to take her car, at which point Dean just walks into the barn where Sam is, and we see that the cop is like locked up in the cage that Alvin used to be in. The automatic gate doesn't seem to work anymore. It seems that like this family is stealing people's cars as well, and the cop's brother's car that we saw in that like one photo is like out back. So Dean decides to go look for a key, and he like finds this basement full of souvenirs, and like I said, it's just like the most dangerous game. This family likes to hunt people. So the house seems empty, but there's like music playing. Someone's in the kitchen like butchering something or someone. Dean finds a box full of keys, a jar of teeth, and like bones everywhere. And then he turns and he sees the little girl and he goes, "I'm not gonna hurt you." And she goes, "I know," and then stabs him with a dagger. She like calls out to her dad. Dean gets like tied up to a chair, and because they only have two cages, they start torturing him to make him choose who they like kill first. When he doesn't want to answer, they use like a fire poker straight into Dean's shoulder, and he says Sam. The dad then says, "Great, shoot him while he's still in the cage, and then you know what, shoot the cop for good measure anyways." But this guy is dumb, and he fully unlocks the gate to let Sam out. Sam has like a metal bracket that fell when he took down the wiring, so he hits the guy in the side of the head and grabs the gun. So let me just read this from my notes because a lot just happens and it's a little confusing. So Sam and this guy fight, and Sam of course wins. The gun jams and the family goes to see what happens. The little girl is in charge of keeping an eye on Dean. Running around in the dark, the other brother accidentally shoots his own father in the shoulder, and then Sam beats him up. The cop asks why he killed her brother, and the guy said it was for fun, so she just fully kills him. And then the cop just lets the boys go because she did some shady stuff, they did some shady stuff. Episode 1.16, Shadow. I highly recommend this episode because a certain character comes back and it's so much fun. But we'll start with the victim POV. A girl is like walking down the streets of Chicago, and she's like bopping around listening to her white wired headphones, and like her music skips. She takes out her headphones and she hears like a weird whisper of her name, Meredith. So she starts running, and we see this like really cool shot from above where like a huge shadow starts looming behind her as she runs. We see her like fumble around with her keychain of like 30 keys. She disarms and rearms her like security at her house. Also, fun fact, she has the same zebra pillows I had growing up. I think they're from IKEA. You love to see it. She like checks her answering machine, and there's some guy named Derek who called, which feels like yet another Grey's Anatomy reference. Behind her, we see like a shadow person jumping from shadow to shadow until we see her just standing there, and these like long spooky Nosferatu hands like grab into her chest and pull out her heart, and we just see the red blood splatter, which is like a really cool effect. A week later, the boys show up in little like matching work jumpsuits as new alarm fitters. There's no sign of a struggle, nothing was broken, and the alarm and door chain were still like on. And it seems that Meredith's body was like ripped apart into pieces, and there's blood splatter all over her like white carpet. They run EMF, which does go off, and then we find out that Dean slept with like a female cop and got more information about the case. And we find out that Meredith's heart was like missing. Dean then used like masking tape to create this weird symbol on the ground, connecting all the blood splatter dots. Later at a bar, Dean gets the female bartender's number, and Sam finds like more information about only one other case. It seems like a guy was killed in his townhouse in like the same way, but there's like no relationship to Meredith. And then Sam gets up and he like just walks over to a different person at the bar, which we see Meg Masters, blonde pixie cut and all. And so she mentions that she's from Andover, Mass. It's weird that she's not in California and she's like in Indiana for some reason. She then gets like really pissed off at Dean for like dragging Sam around like luggage. So it's really awkward. But then she's like all flirty with Sam and like gives him her number. As they're walking out, Dean is annoyed that Sam talks shit about him. Sam is just like suspicious of Meg because she was going off to California, and why did they find her randomly in a bar like a few weeks later? And so Dean goes to do research. Sam decides to keep an eye on her. And he's literally just sitting in the car outside her apartment. Like, that's weird. Dean's research says that the symbol they made was like Zoroastrian. It's to summon a deva or a demon of darkness. They're kind of like savage hellhounds is what they said. And so someone must have like summoned these and like is controlling them. They have to know really old school magic. So Sam's following Meg to some old abandoned like warehouse. And when he goes in, the like stairs are locked. So he has to like climb in this old elevator shaft that's like just grates. But by the time he gets to the top, Meg is like standing at an altar, and there's a mirror with that symbol drawn in blood. And it seems that she's making another call in her like silly little chalice of blood. And she says, "You shouldn't come, the brothers are here." Sam then catches Dean up. Dean tells Sam that they missed something and that Meredith and that man who died were both from Lawrence, Kansas. They want to do a stakeout because they think this person meeting Meg could be the demon that killed their mom. Dean decides that they have to call John. Sam is getting like very excited about like killing this monster. He says this whole thing could be over tonight. And I'm like, buddy, the season's not even over tonight. Like, what are you talking about? Sam is all excited and he like wants to go back to school, and Dean says that he just wants to keep hunting monsters. And Sam's like, no dude, but like, what do you really want? And Dean says that he just wants his family back together. And that's sad. But the boys go to the warehouse, and somehow they think that having all this like gear on them as they're climbing an elevator shaft will be totally fine. And so they get up and they're like standing there and they're pointing a gun at Meg, and they ask, "Who are you waiting for?" And she says, "You." She like knew they were standing there the whole time. They're standing right next to each other. The shadow like jumps them and it like pushes them down and slashes their face, but it kind of just looks like a comical Halloween costume. But the boys wake up and they're like sitting and like tied up to these posts, and like obviously it was all a trap, including that the victims were from Lawrence. But the trap's not for them, it's for John. Dean is like super confident and says that his dad wasn't even in town and like he wouldn't have fallen for it. And Meg is like, no, like the Devas are invincible. Like no matter how good your dad is, like he still can and will die. And so the boys ask, like, why is she doing this? And she says, for love, like he has for his mom and Jess. And you're like, hello? Sam says, go to hell. And she goes, baby, I'm already here. I love Meg. She then, like, crawls over to Sam and, like, starts straddling him and whispering things. As she's distracted, Dean, like, takes out a pocket knife, starts cut through the rope binding his hands. She, like, gets up, takes the blade, and, like, throws it across the room. But the thing is, Dean was the distraction, and Sam had done the same thing. Sam like headbutts Meg and then runs up to the altar and destroys it. As he does, this destroys the control that Meg has over the Devas. There's two of them. They both grab her and just like throw her from like this fourth floor window, and she's just like down there on the ground like dead. Rest in peace, Meg. You were a real one. So the boys like head back to their hotel, and Sam has this big bag of Chekhov's gear, and as they walk in, there's someone in there, and he turns around and it's John. They finally get to reconnect. Sam looks like he's about to cry. Dean just looks like relieved. So Dean and John hug for like a long moment. Dean apologizes for falling for the trap. John says that he was there when he saw like Meg fall to the ground and died. And he says that this demon has tried to get him before and that he's going to kill it first. Which is wild. Like, he's not going to exorcise it or send it back to hell. Like, he fully wants to kill it, which is, like, unheard of. For now, you know, for a couple seasons at least. Sam says that they can help, and John says no, because he doesn't want the boys to get caught in the crossfire. He then says it's good to see Sam fully doesn't apologize for all the shit they've been through. And then, in classic Winchester fashion, say it with me, they all get thrown into the wall by the shadows. You can count this as 3 on your check marks. Like, is it fun at least to get thrown into a wall? Does it hurt? I feel like it would be, like, stressful. And, like, if you fuck up a take, you're gonna have to keep doing it. So we see Meg standing outside with this necklace symbol. John's, like, really messed up by the shadow monsters, so Sam uses the flare gun that he still had in his gear bag, shoots it, and obviously that destroys these, like, shadows. He also says this cheesy line saying, let's light him up. It's fine. The place fills with white light and smoke, and Dean helps his dad out of the building. Outside, Dean realizes that John has to go. Staying with the boys, he's at more risk, and Sam begs John to let him stay, but it's just getting started. John then gets in his truck with his Kansas plates, and the boys get in their Impala. They finally found their dad, and here they are just like watching him drive off, and then they have to go in a different direction. It's sad. Then we see Meg in the shadows just like watching them all drive off. Episode 1.17, Hell House. I highly recommend this episode. It's the first of these, what are we gonna call? Ghost Facer episodes? You'll get it soon. I think they're so fun. I might be biased. It's kind of like how I like the musical episode of Grey's Anatomy. I don't care if other people don't like them. These are some of my favorites. But victim POV. We see 4 teens in a creepy abandoned house. Inside there's like a pentagram and a bunch of other weird symbols on all the walls. One guy explains that there was like a ghost in the cellar and it goes after girls and like strings them up. And of course, when they go down to the basement, they find like a girl hung by a noose. Cutting back to the boys, Sam is like asleep in the car, and Dean decides to like pull a prank on him by putting a spoon in his mouth. And then he blasts the audio and like Sam wakes up like shocked. I don't know. Sam says that they're not kids and they shouldn't be exchanging all these pranks, but that Dean will regret this. Back to the case, I guess when the kids reported the body, it was gone. Boys talk shit about like small town ghost hunters, and they like head to the diner to meet the kids. They all have like very different recollections of like what the girl looked like and what the house was like. So it's just kind of like confusing. Craig, who is like the leader of the teens, works at an old record shop, and he explains like the Hell House lore for us. In the 30s, this guy named Mordecai Murdoch was a farmer. He had 6 daughters, and during the Great Depression, they were running out of food, so he decided it was better to hang them up to die than starve to death. And then Craig says that he learned all of this from his cousin Dana. The boys go to check out the house during the day, and they think the symbols might just be graffiti, but Sam still takes a picture of them on his like little flip phone. The boys then hear something in the kitchen, and so as they go over, they're suddenly like blinded by these flashlights, and they hear these guys go, "Cut!" These 2 guys are filming bad paranormal investigation show. I love it. These are Ed and Harry, everyone. Say hi. They're a little geeky, but oh so confident. And so they think the Winchesters are amateurs and like start walking them through the house explaining like EMF and all this other stuff, and the boys just decide to play dumb. So the boys go off and do some research on the house, and they find records of a man called Martin Murdoch who was in the house, but he had 2 sons and never seemed to have killed anyone. Dean also says the cops say there's no missing persons that like match the girl who died, and so this case is probably a bust. We also get Sam's first prank, which was just the music starts blaring really loudly in like Spanish instead of normal dad rock. These pranks are dumb, okay? We see more teens hanging out at that house that night. They're playing Truth or Dare, and so this girl has to either kiss one of the guys or go get a jar from the basement. And so she does, and she's like holding this jar of red liquid when she gets like spooked and drops it and her glasses. So she gets killed, and the next morning the cops are there and they find her and they just think that it's like a suicide, which doesn't make sense because she was in the middle of Truth or Dare with her friends, but whatever. So Sam and Dean go back to the house the next night, and there's now cops patrolling the place. And so the boys are crouching in the bushes, and we see our paranormal investigators like trying to sneak towards the house. And so Dean yells, "Who are you gonna call?" And the ghost busting friends get caught and they like just run. And so while the cops are distracted, the Winchesters go into the house. Dean picks up the same jar as the girl that seems like magically replaced and dares Sam to drink it. Then they hear a noise in the cabinet, and as they open it, rats just run out. It's like not a ghost. But then behind them is the ghost. It's like a shadowy creature with like red eyes, and they shoot it with rock salt, but it seems to be immune somehow. So the boys actually run, and Dean gets like pushed through a shelf of jars, and the ghost is now like a light gray. Outside, the ghost hunters are trying to sneak back in, and Sam and Dean like burst out the front doors, and the ghost facers get a glimpse of this gray ghost following them. And so we see the boys, and they're fun like Western themed hotel room. There's like a little like golden decorative armadillo. The hotel rooms are like kind of the bland and all the same, but sometimes they're like weird and different. Like there's one that's like bowling themed at one point. So the boys are talking about how weird this case is and how like the ghosts don't seem to be matching what they're being told and like looking up. The first one was like Mordecai, and then the second one was a light gray one who has an axe and like slit wrists, so obviously he didn't hang himself. And then Sam finds a new blog post, and it seems that maybe this ghost is changing with the new stories that are being told about it. And Dean actually recognizes that weird upside down cross symbol that they had seen on the walls, and so they go back to bother Craig, that teen at the record shop. The symbol is actually a logo from a rock band, the Blue Oyster Cult, which I only mentioned because they have a song that's in like the 2nd season that's so good. So Craig says that he's all sad because like now someone's actually died, and that first night of the teens was actually just like a prank that he and his cousin set up. They had just chosen like a bunch of random symbols from her philosophy and religion book, but word got around and this blog was made, and so now a second girl is actually dead. They think that one of these symbols is amplifying the power of the stories. Sam thinks the ghost is a tulpa. In the early 1900s, 20 Tibetan monks like meditated on a golem so much that they made it real. And so if 1,000 servers or people truly believe in this Mordecai Murdoch house, why wouldn't they be able to like create this ghost out of thin air? Now, because of the video clip that the ghost facers got, the website is even more popular. And so we cut back to the ghost facers. Harry, the one in the vest, doesn't want to go back, and then Ed, the one in the glasses, is like they have to make it big, and this is their ticket to fame, money, sex, with girls. And you're like, Why'd you have to add the with girls part? Babe, what are you implying? And so Harry just looks very uncomfortable. But they follow it up with WWBD, what would Buffy do? Which are like, slay. And so Sam and Dean show up and they're like a whole head taller than Ed and Harry, which like is not their fault. Dean looks short next to Sam. They're both over 6 feet. They're just extremely tall men. The boys tell them to take down the blogs. Ed says no, and Dean threatens to kick his ass. It feels like very high school. The Winchesters then start walking away because they're like, well, if you don't take down the blog, we can't tell you this new secret thing we learned about Mordecai. And so they're like, no, 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 no. We'll take it down, we promise. And so Sam tells him, like, reluctantly, that Mordecai died by shooting himself with a .45 pistol, and if you hit the ghost with wrought iron rounds, then you can kill the ghost. So Harry literally runs to, like, update the website. There's a quick scene in a diner where, like, Dean keeps, like, pulling the string on this annoying ornament, and then Sam pranks him by putting super glue on his beer bottle so he can't take it off his hand. And then at night, they're hiding outside in the bushes, the cops are there, and so then they get distracted by someone like pulling the string on the ornament, and so the boys are able to run into the house. The Winchesters sneak in, and Ed and Harry are there filming, and they actually like shoot the ghost, but it just like dissipates. It's not actually gone. And we find out that these early 2000 servers crashed, and the story can't get updated, so the like wrought iron rounds are not going to work. Long story short, Dean sets the place on fire and they just run. As long as the website is up and like the story can keep changing, this ghost is just gonna keep changing, and so there's no house to be killed at. They're fine. Boys then say goodbye to Ed and Harry. They're all packed up and heading to LA. I guess like they're selling movie rights to this, and then maybe they're gonna make a role-playing game. And so Sam later on says that he was the producer. Dean says that he put a fish in their back seat, and so now the boys have a prank truce because they both turned on these poor nerds. Yep, I love Hell House. I think it's so fun. Episode 1.18, Something Wicked. On Netflix, for some reason, they added This Way Comes. I would put this in like the middle ground. I think it's really fun because it's our first flashback of young Winchesters. And also one of my all-time favorite NPCs to talk about, homophobic kid. You don't have to watch it. Like, I think the actual plot of this episode is not good. So the episode starts with a little girl like praying in her bed, and then her dad comes to like tuck her in at night, and she asks like when her mom and her sister can come home, and we find out that they're at the hospital because the little sister is sick. Her sister's bed is empty and like next to her, and she's like freaked out by like the branches tapping on the window of her room. The shadow of the branches turns into like this long, creepy Nosferatu-like hand that like opens the window, and this like person comes in, and somehow Palpatine has returned. His mouth glows a whitish blue, and then the little girl screams. And so Sam and Dean are driving, and John, I guess, sent them coordinates to like Fitchburg, Wisconsin, where this case is happening. And Sam can't seem to find anything suspicious about this town. And Dean says that Sam shouldn't worry. There's always something to kill. Sir. Sam asks how he knows that, and Dean says because I'm older and I'm always right. Hear that, Arthur? I'm always right. Once they're in town, they see that the like park is empty and there's only like one kid playing. And so they ask about the mom, and she says that like 5 or 6 kids have gotten really sick, and so all the parents are very anxious and not letting their kids go outside. So obviously the boys head off to the hospital. They're wearing some suits, and Sam sees that his ID just says Bikini Inspector. He's very nervous about using it, but like they get in fine. They get escorted by Dr. Heidecker, who's explaining the case. 5 kids in 5 weeks have gotten like really weak. They're not responding to antibiotics, their white blood cell count is going down. And it's weird because it just like travels through families. So it starts with one sibling, works through all of them, and then goes to a new family. They then talk to the dad from the start of the episode, and they think it might be pneumonia because the window was open, but it's like the second floor with like no ledge, and so the little girl must have opened it. Couldn't have just been someone walking by. So the boys break in and check out the house, and there's like a cool handprint like rotted into the wood by the window. So we get our first official flashback. It's all like sepia toned, but we get to see baby Dean. Well, I guess he's not a baby anymore. He's not 4. He's like 10. But he's looking at a picture of the same rotted handprint. And so John, without his beard, tells Dean like to repeat all the rules of staying safe. Don't answer the phone. That John's signal is that he'll call once, hang up, and then call again. And Dean says that he's heard it a million times, but John says it only takes one mistake. And if John's not back, that he needs to call Pastor Jim, lock everything, close the blinds, and most importantly, watch out for Sammy. If something busts in, to shoot first and ask questions later. This poor little boy. John literally calls him my little man. Sir, this is not a man. You are leaving a child in charge of another child with a gun. Terrible parenting. We find out that the monster is like a striga. It's like a Russian witch that seems to have gotten away 16, 17 years ago. So Dean gets a hotel room, and we get the iconic homophobic kid with a bad haircut. This kid is like working the front desk, and he asks, king or two queens? And Dean says, two queens. And the kid looks behind him at Sam, like sitting outside on front of the car, and he goes, I bet. Excuse me? Dean then tries to get this kid to repeat it, and the kid just says, nice car. At which point his mom comes out. I feel like we get like a weird MasterCard product placement, which is weird, because like, we know Sam and Dean are doing credit card scams. Dean then sees the homophobic kid in the back pouring his little brother a glass of milk, and we get a flashback of Dean making Sam spaghettios. Sam, I guess, asked for these like spaghettis, but now he just wants Lucky Charms. Dean says they're out, but there's like a box right behind him. And then he goes, but there's only one bowl left, and I haven't had a chance yet. But he gives it to Sam anyways, who then gives him back the toy. So doing some research, the boys find out that the Striga drink people's life forces and prefers children. They're supposedly immune to any weapon devised by God or man. But John says in his notes that if you shoot it with a wrought iron round while it's feeding, you can kill it. We then see like the branch fingers opening a window again, and the next day we find out that the next sick kid was actually the homophobe's little brother. I'll be nice. This kid's name is like Michael, which is only relevant for like season 5, and like the way that this kid is very similar to Dean Winchester. But yeah, Michael feels very guilty for not closing the window the last night, even though he thinks he did, and this also means that he's next. More research shows that this usually goes on for months, and that dozens of kids are hit and then they all die. So the Striga usually disguises themselves as something innocuous, and all the houses were near the hospital. This is about every 15 to 20 years since like 1893. And the boys find a picture of Dr. Heidecker. So Dean comes back like all pissed off and says that they have to use Michael as bait. Sam says no, and Dean is all worked up because he thinks that this is all his fault. And so we get a new flashback. Baby Dean is like bored after 3 days of being locked in this hotel room, and Sam is just asleep. And so he goes to the hotel arcade. When he comes back, the lights are on, and the Striga is like drinking from Sam. And so Dean grabs the gun and like cocks it, but he hesitates with the shotgun. And so the Striga stops and turns towards him, at which point John like bursts into the room, and the Striga like escapes out the window. John starts yelling at Dean and sitting there like holding baby Sam, and they like just get in the car and leave. And so by the time that John comes back, the Striga had already left. They never talked about it again, but then after that, supposedly John like never looked at Dean the same way. And Dean says the saddest line, not that I blame him. He gave me orders and I didn't listen, and I almost got you killed. You're a kid. It's so sad. So the boys tell Michael about this whole situation and convince him that this thing is real and that they can help. Dean is like really good with Michael, and Sam apologizes to Dean for always giving him crap for following orders, and Dean at first is like touched but then like disgusted by all this like touchy-feely stuff. Anyways, the trap works. Palpatine starts to feed, but then the boys yell, hey, so Michael has a moment to like roll off the bed and hide underneath it as they shoot. The Striga falls and is covered in bullet wounds, but as Dean walks over, he like stops to look at Sam, and then the thing gets up and, say it with me, throws Dean telekinetically into the wall. It then pins down Sam, and like really bad CGI sucks Sam's life from him as he's like struggling to grab his gun. Dean yells, hey, and as the witch looks up, he shoots it between the eyes. It then starts to deflate, and then he shoots it a couple more times. And we see all these like different spirits fly out, and then we find out all the kids are fine, and Dr. Heidecker never came back to work. Sam is sad that like Michael lost his like innocence, kind of like how they did. And Dean says, sometimes I still wish you were innocent too. Not yourself, Dean? No. He's not good enough. He doesn't get to have a childhood, just Sam does. Sorry if the lighting has gotten worse. The walls are yellow, the lights are yellow. I'm out of daylight to like any kind of balance, but whatever. Season 1, episode 19, Provenance. I would kind of recommend this episode. I really like the female character, and I think the plot is interesting. It's not a must watch, but it's not a bad one at all. So we open on a creepy family portrait. There's a mom, two sons, a dad, and a little girl. And he places his hand on the little girl's shoulder and he's looking down at her. One of the boys is holding a boat, and there's also an old-timey like shaving razor on the table. Some rich couple just like bought this painting at an auction. They just got home and took the painting and like hung it up. But then they start getting like all flirty. The dad in the picture like turns and starts looking at them. So the woman starts heading upstairs. Her husband starts locking all the doors and getting ready, and then follows up behind. We see the painting where the switchblade is missing. We then hear footsteps in the hallway, and the candle in the bedroom goes out. Then we see the husband going up the stairs. The bedroom is dark, but he like gets in bed and it's wet. He turns on the light, it's blood. He like then falls over and we see him killed. The boys are in a bar, and like always, Dean is getting some girl's number. Sam is doing some research. Dean says something about Sam not dating, which is like, his girlfriend died like 6 months ago, and he just kind of hit it off with Meg, but then she turned out to be a little crazy, so like, what do you want from him? Sam ignores it and says that John has noted 3 similar murders in 1912, 1945, and 1970. They're all locked houses with throats slit. Dean goes back to talk to the girls at the bar, and he wakes up hungover the next morning. Sam has already swept the house, looked up its history, looked up the couple's history, and everything looks fine. All their stuff was sold in like an estate sale, and so the boys can't check if it's like a cursed object they might have. So we head over to the Blake auction house. Everyone's in like really nice like cocktail wear, and these 2 boys just show up in their like jeans, heavy boots, like big leather jackets. Like, you love how out of place they are. And this pretty lady walks over. Her name is Sarah Blake, and she's like testing Sam on his like art history. He then asks for like the provenances, so like a piece of paper that tells you where like a painting or an object has been and like who it belonged to. But she quickly gets shut down by her own father, and the boys get kicked out. The boys have a really fun like funky black and white disco room in this episode. But Dean tells Sam to like use Sarah for information because they really seem to like hit it off. Sam and Sarah go on a date. They're at a fancy place. Sam doesn't know what to do with the wine list, so Sarah just like orders them beers. And it's just like a cute dinner. We find out more about both of them, and Sarah says that she was an art major and then she wasn't very good at it, and her mom died a year ago, which is why she's now working at her dad's auction house. And there's just like a lot of slow shots of pretty people staring at each other, which like isn't bad. Sam goes back to the motel and he has like the provenance with him. Dean says they can stick around in town longer if Sam like wants to keep seeing Sarah. And so they figured out that the painting is the cursed object that the couple just got, and they break into the auction house to burn it. They just like fully cut it out of the frame, set it on the floor, set a match on it, and it like burns into ash. The next day, the boys are like packing up, and Dean's like, shoot, I forgot my wallet at the auction house. We have to go back. And so they run back panicked, and they run into Sarah. Sam says that they're leaving town, and Dean's like, no, we can like stay. Also, by the way, here's my $20 I forgot to give you, fully taking out his own wallet that he had this whole time. Sam then sees the painting behind Sarah and starts panicking. He tells Sarah not to sell it, and the boys like run. So the boys do research on like the family in the painting, and they find like an article about the Titanic sinking, and then a very small like side column that says that the dad was a barber and he slaughtered the entire family, then killed himself with the straight razor. We also find out that the daughter was adopted and that the mom was maybe going to like take the kids, which is unheard of back then. And so all their bodies were cremated, and there's a picture of the family in the book, like of this painting, and the dad is like looking straight ahead. The boys try to have a heart-to-heart about Jessica, and then Sam calls Sarah. They want to get the painting, but she's already sold it. We see this lady sitting at her fireplace, and then she fully just gets killed. Sarah then meets the boys at this lady's house and asks if they're burglars, because like Dean breaks into the house. They find the lady like dead, and the head like clicks backwards as Sarah like touches her shoulder. Sarah then tells the cops that she was there alone, and then goes to the motel to ask Sam for some answers. They explain that the painting is haunted, and Sarah's like scared, but she like still wants to help, and so Dean's like a little impressed. They go back to the crime scene and they like look at the painting. In real life for them, the dad is looking at the daughter and the straight razor is open, but in the book, the straight razor is closed and the dad is looking straight ahead. The last difference is that in the book, the painting has a landscape painted in the painting behind them, and in real life there's a family mausoleum like painted instead of so the boys head to the graveyard and the crew like breaks into the crypt. There's a bunch of like kids toys behind glass and there's only 4 urns, so it means that the dad was not burned and buried with them. The dad is missing, so Dean goes to get information and Sam and Sarah have like a moment alone as they're doing research. She just straight up asks if there's something going on between them, and Sam says yes, but that they can't be together because all the people around him get hurt. Sarah says that he can't shut out happiness because that's what she did after her mom died. Dean then fully interrupts them. So the boys dig up the bones, salt and burn them, and then they head back to the old lady's house to like deal with the painting. Sarah's still with them, so Dean decides to like stay in the car and he tells Sam to like pull a move. When Sarah and Sam walk into the house, the doors lock. The painting is missing the straight razor and the little girl. So they didn't come prepared. They don't have any like salt or like weapons. So they're running around. The woman is a low sodium household, so she has no salt. There's no iron upstairs. And then they run down to like the fireplace and the little girl appears and like starts trying to attack them. I mean, she's like still carrying her dolls. And so Sam picks up like the iron poker from the fireplace and like swings at her. She screams and like dissipates, but she's not dead. At which point Sarah says that it must be the doll because back then they used to make them in like the kid's image with some of their own hair. And Sam fully like dismisses it at first, which is a red flag. Because the bodies were already cremated, Dean actually runs back to the mausoleum to go burn the toy. The ghost girl then slams Sam into the dresser and he falls down. Yep. Sarah tries to help and is like face to face with the little girl, and then she gets thrown into the wall. Dean then lights the doll's hair on fire, and the girl is about to slit Sarah's throat when Sam jumps in front, and the little girl catches fire and reappears in the painting. And we find out that the daughter was adopted after her entire family died, and they were all like murdered in their beds. So finally, the painting is like actually burned, and Dean like awkwardly leaves the lovebirds alone. They say they miss each other. So Sarah says that they made it through in one piece. Like maybe he can open up his heart and it'll be fine. He agrees and he says like maybe he can come back. Sam then goes out to the car and she like closes the door and she's like all moody and sad. And then Sam's like knocking on the door to come back in and they just start making out. And it's very cute. And spoiler alert, we do get to see Sarah again. I love that for them. Season 1, episode 20, Dead Man's Blood. I highly recommend this episode because it is the first time we get to see vampires, which are like kind of an important supernatural lore. Like they come back over and over and over again. We open on an old man. His name is Mr. Elkins. He's looking through a journal that looks a lot like John's, and he's like at a bar when this like hot lady with like a cross necklace and a leather top comes in with her like biker crew behind her, and she says they're just there for a drink and they have like dinner plans or something. Elkins like kind of stares at them and then just like leaves the bar without finishing his drink. Back at his cabin, this woman, her name is Kate, shows up and her eyes like flash silver. He asks what she wants and then he just fully throws a knife at her that like embeds itself in her stomach. He then runs and like slams shut a door. She like slowly pulls it out of her and doesn't even flinch and goes after him. Elkin like pushes a bookshelf in front of the door and pulls an old like pistol out of the safe in the wall. There are 5 bullets in this case and a pentagram on the handle. 2 of the guys from like the biker gang just fall through the skylight and start attacking this man. The bookshelf then falls over and the door opens and Kate comes in and she tells her guys that they can eat. Sam and Dean are in a diner in Nebraska. They're looking for a case they can't find anything. So Dean is like, do you want to go back to New York? Do you want to see Sarah? And I'm like, dude, you guys just left. Sam says that they should focus. He sees about Elkin's death and Dean like recognizes the name from John's journal. So they head to Colorado where Elkins lived and there's a cabin. There's some kind of like salt ring around the door and Elkin's old journal. Dean does a pencil rubbing of the floor and finds like a code that seems to be a post office combination. So they stop by and like open it and they find a letter for JW. As they're considering committing a felony of opening someone else's mail, John shows up. And he's like, yeah, no, we like used to know each other and had like a falling out. John says that he's been watching the boys, making sure they weren't followed, which is like, I thought you were supposed to go find the demon. Why are you following them? Reading the letter, John finds out that Elkins has something called the Colt revolver, but it wasn't at the house that the boys had, and so they have to like get on the trail. The boys ask what the like monster is, and John says it's vampires. He thought they were all extinct because that was like Elkins' like specialty. And so here's some supernatural vampire lore. Crosses don't repel them. Obviously, Kate was wearing one. Sunlight and a stake to the heart don't kill them. and victims are taken back to the vamp nest where they're kept alive and like slowly drained over a few weeks. And so we just see these vamps like hanging out by the side of the road. One of them like lays down on the ground like playing dead as a couple's like driving by, and so they think that they hit him. The man gets out of the car, and as he walks over the dead guy, turns to look at him, and there's this really bad CGI of like long pointy teeth like deploying over his normal human teeth. That's like what makes these vampires look different. They're not sparkly. They have these weird, gnarly second set of teeth. John listens to the police report and wakes the boys. He thinks that the attack was vamps, and so they get to the crime scene, and Sam just immediately starts butting heads with John. He's like asking why he's so sure that it's vamps. John says that he found a tooth. He then says some like harsh things to Dean about how he's not taking care of baby, which is like not true. She's always beautifully shiny. And so in the car, the boys are like driving themselves, and they start fighting, and John is like in front in his truck. And Sam's getting pissed off about being treated like children and like being expected to do everything without explanation. And then Dean like always says that he's ready to do whatever John says. We see the vamps are having a party. There's like music and drinking, and one of the guys tells the kidnapped wife, her name is Jenny, to drink his beer so he can like taste it in their blood. The husband says no, and then the vamp tries to make Jenny drink out of it, which felt like really sleazy watching it, but then she spits in his face, so good for her. The vamp then tries to go and hit her, but Kate, the hot vampire from before, tells them to stop and to wait for Luther, which perfect timing because the doors like swing open and Luther just walks in. He makes out with Kate, and he like checks out the hostages. He says that they can eat the husband already, but the wife is interesting. And so that man dies immediately. Like a bunch of vampires jump him and he's gone. Kate then shows Luther the stuff that they took from Elkin's like cabin. I think they left the journal, but they have like the Colt and all the bullets. And she's like, it's so funny that like he thinks that this can kill us. And Luther's like, this is no ordinary gun. And then Luther's also pissed that she killed Elkins because that means other hunters are now going to be on their trail. And she's like, no, but I wanted revenge for your family. So guess they were all killed by Elkins because obviously all the vampires went extinct, supposedly. Sam is then pissed at John when he like calls them to say to take the next exit, and so Sam is driving and he just fully speeds up and like does a U-turn to block off the truck. He gets out and asks for answers, and then John yells at him to move. They start arguing, and Dean has to like get in the middle and like break up the fight. We then see like the Winchesters are staking out the barn. John says that like direct sun hurts like a really bad sunburn, but the only way to kill a vampire is by beheading it. They also like sleep during the day, but they can wake up. Dean then says that they can't just like walk in, and John's like, no, that's exactly the plan. Sir. So we see the boys like open the trunk of the Impala and all of their like weapons in there, and then John like presses a button of like his new truck, and this like box opens up, and there's like layers, and it's all like perfectly fit into the foam. And I just like in that moment I truly hated John Winchester, which sounds stupid, but like he bought the Impala when he was like 18 and then gives it to his son, and he's like, yeah, you should take better care of this like old school car. And it's like, you just get to buy new toys, and I need to calm down.
Are you kidding? That's unfair. She made those. I need to calm down. Everything's fine.
I don't know why it was that exact moment that pissed me off. All the rest of like treating them like little soldiers, I'm like, you're a shitty dad, but like you just want to protect them. This one I'm like, you're just selfish. Anyways, we do see like the vamps from the night before making out, and the upset kidnapped wife is just like crying. And so Luther like comes over and he's like, oh, I also like to watch you. And so Kate comes over and she says that she won't kill the hostage, she'll just make her feel higher than ever before. So Luther slits Kate's wrist, she drinks her own blood, and then she starts making out with Jenny the hostage. Disgusting. Like, I know that's what they're doing to like turn her into a vampire, but please stop. I hate this. And then Luther, of all things, he goes, welcome home, baby. Ick. Ick. I love vampires. Why do you gotta be so icky? Anyways, John finally tells us the story of the cult. In 1835, when Halley's Comet passed, the night of the Alamo happened. Samuel Colt made a special gun for a hunter just like them, only he was on horseback. He made only 13 bullets, and the hunter only used 6 until he disappeared. Somehow the old man, Elkins, got the gun, and supposedly this gun can kill anything, like any kind of monster, including the yellow-eyed demon. I don't know if I've mentioned before that the demon has yellow eyes. It gets mentioned at some point. It's like a weird thing. Like demons usually have black eyes. This one, he's different. The boys finally break into the barn. All the vamps are asleep. I think there's like 7 of them. There's like the couple, there's Jenny, there's like 3 more guys, and then another girl vampire. John goes into the bedroom to find the gun specifically. Sam starts unlocking Jenny, and Dean starts unlocking like a cage with like a bunch of other hostages. But when Jenny like opens her eyes and sees Sam, she releases this like inhuman scream, just wakes everyone up. So obviously all hell breaks loose. John was by Luther's bed when Luther wakes up and of course gets thrown into the wall. How many are we at? Like, this is crazy. And it's not the last time. They're going to keep getting thrown into walls. Spoiler alert. John then grabs a bottle, throws it, breaking like a covered window above the bed, and so the vampires like are distracted by the burns. So the boys are told to run, and they do, and all the vampires seem to like stay by the barn doors. The boys get to the car, John is delayed, and he says that like the vamps will wait for nightfall. Once they get your scent though, they hunt you for life. Back at the cabin, Dean is out like on a job, and so John tries to have a heart-to-heart with Sam. And so they're like sitting at the table. He's tired. He's playing with like his old wedding ring. And John says that he used to save $100 a month for each of the boys for like a college fund because hunting was never the life he wanted. It was just kind of what they ended up with after Mary died. And so then he kind of stopped being their father and started being their drill sergeant. And the idea of Sam like being alone at college freaked him out so much that he like yelled at him to stay away because then maybe that would keep him safer, especially because he's been trained his whole life to protect himself, so he would have been okay a little bit. Sam acts like he gets it and then says like now with Jess being gone, the two of them are more alike than ever, which is like sucks for Dean. Like all he wants is his father's approval, and here's his brother having a nice heart to heart. And so Dean comes home with a like half of a really big bottle just full of blood that he got at the morgue. The next night, we see Dean working on Baby's engine, like all alone, at which point Kate comes over and offers him a lift. Like she doesn't recognize him? I don't know. And then she offers maybe a trip back to her place. Dean says thanks, but he usually draws the line at necrophilia, which, like, that was a good line. That was a good line. She slaps him and another vampire appears. She grabs Dean and starts making out with him. No consent. She asks if she should turn him, and he goes, I never stick around, especially for eternity. As they're making out, arrows shoot through her and the other vampire. She's like, that's not gonna do anything. But then she faints because the arrows were like soaked in dead man's blood. And so Sam like walks over to like the head one vampire, but then John shows up and just machetes it off, and you're like, great, okay, you're the star. And so they just like take Kate and throw her in the back of the car. The boys use burnt ash of saffron, cabbage, skunks, and trillium to cover their scents, and the boys are like splitting up with John. They're going in different cars. So John is going to go trade Kate for the gun, and Dean says that he can't take on all the vampires. There's still 6 of them if we're counting Kate. Sam asks if they'll meet up after because he wants to like use the gun, go hunt the yellow-eyed demon. John says no, and Sam is pissed for being treated like a child yet again, which like I fully understand. But then John also says you are children, which I also kind of understand. Like they're not. They're adults. But like he is their parent, he will always like see them as his children. And so John says that he's just trying to keep them safe, and Dean butts in and goes, that's a bunch of crap, because John just keeps sending them on really dangerous jobs anyways. John doesn't think he'll make it out of this job alive, and Dean says what if he dies? They could have been there to like save him. They all get emotional about the power of their family having each other's backs. Which is like true. They are safer together. Anyways, the boys are back at the barn, and there was one vamp left behind, so Dean kills him, and then he releases all the hostages again. And so this was John's order, and now they're supposed to just leave town. On the other hand, John is meeting up with all the other vamps. He's like driving in the truck, and Kate wakes up, and there's 2 full cars of vampires like trailing him, and somehow they disappear and like reappear in front of him. The cars are like parked in the road, blocking him off, and the 4 vampires are standing there, and their eyes are all silver from reflecting John's like headlights. Luther then puts the gun down as a trade for Kate. As John bends down to grab it, Kate then hits him. John falls back. Luther then punches John in the face, and he goes flying, and he hits the front of the car, breaking the lights, and now he's on the ground half unconscious. Thankfully, the boys are still around, and they start shooting all the vampires with like blood-soaked arrows. Luther then grabs a hold of Sam as he's getting closer and threatens to break his neck if Dean doesn't put the machete down. Luther then says, why don't you people ever leave us alone? Which is like kind of valid. They kind of eradicated the vampires, but like they are vampires, and technically that's a monster. Oh, the morals of Supernatural. Luther says we have as much right to live as you do, and John says, I don't think so, and uses one of the 5 Colt bullets on Luther. He shoots Luther right between the eyes, and Kate and the last vampire, the kidnapped wife, Jenny, get in their car and run away. Episode 121, Salvation. This is a middle ground recommendation again. There's like a lot of supernatural lore, but that's kind of it. No, honestly, it's kind of a useless episode, which is why most of the times when I watch a show, this is where I stop. Like, not on the last episode, but like the penultimate one, because I'm like, most of the storylines are wrapped up or like annoying and just setting up for the last episode. But we'll get into it. There's like a priest reading a book in the church when all the candles flicker and Meg appears. She's back. She starts to like confess all innocent, like, oh, I lied and I met this really nice man and then I slit his throat and ripped his heart out. And like, does that make me a bad person? And then her eyes turn black. Loved it. Gagged, gooped, camp, iconic. Anyways, the priest knows that she's a demon and says that she can't be on hallowed ground, and Meg says that's minor leagues and does not apply to her, which, like, slay. So the priest then runs, and his basement's like a full-on bunker. There's a large wooden bar, like, to put in front of the doors, like in a castle. Just a wall of semi-automatic weapons. Meg breaks down the door super easily. The priest then throws a knife at her head and misses. Great job. She catches the knife and says that she wants to talk to the Winchesters. The priest says that he hasn't talked to John in years, and she goes, I know, and slits his throat and walks away. I'm such a fangirl. Anyways, the boys I think are like staying in Elkin's cabin. John says that he's caught up the boys on everything he knows about the yellow-eyed demon. He didn't have a trail until about a year ago when he like broke off from Dean. It seems that the demon is acting up again and he's burning down houses the night of a baby's like 6-month-old like birthday. And so Sam says that all the deaths are his fault. Sir, you were a baby. What do you mean? Dean says no, Sam says then it's my problem, and Dean yells, it's our problem! John gives us more lore. About a week before the fire, there was a lot of weird things happening in the area. Cattle deaths, temperature fluctuations, electrical storms, and this is like a big indicator of like demons in like future seasons. Like whenever they're like, oh, is there a case here? And they're like, oh, let's check like the weather forecast. And you're like, great, okay, cool. And so on their way to a place called Salvation, John gets a call from Caleb, who like we've mentioned a couple times, but he's not actually important. And he says that he's found the dead body of Pastor Jim, who was the person that baby Dean was supposed to call if something went wrong with the Striga. John is pissed and sad that the pastor is dead, and so the boys split up to go check out 2 different hospital records for like babies' birthdays in the area. Sam is looking at records for like a Mary Ann. He walks out with his notes and he gets like a vision headache. He sees like a lamp, a clown mobile, her mom putting her baby down to bed, and like a train whistle nearby. There's also like a weird music box and a creepy figure all in black. What I've learned from the show is don't wear long flowing white nightgowns when you have a newborn baby. That's honestly an even bigger indication you're gonna die than just sleeping with a Winchester. Sam is then like running in the rain and he finds the house from his like vision. He sees the mom, pretends to be new to the neighborhood, and learns that the baby's 6-month-old birthday is today. Sam then walks away and gets another vision of a clock at 9:45, which is like, great. Cool. These are so specific now. And so, yes, we see the mom dies just like Jess and Mary, stuck to the ceiling, stomach cut, fire everywhere. Back at the motel, John finally learns about the visions, and he's pissed at Dean for not telling him about it. Didn't Missouri Mosley like tell John about Sam having weird psychic powers, and like it's funny that he didn't feel his father was there? Like, I thought he knew. Dean rightfully then gets mad and says they called when they were in Lawrence and Dean was actively dying of that heart attack and John never showed up. Meg then calls them to interrupt. The boys still don't know how she survived. Oh, I'm so sorry. I read my notes wrong earlier. It's not a 4-story drop. It was a 7-story drop. I guess they didn't realize that she was in charge of the shadows the second time around because they never actually saw her. Meg says that she has Caleb held hostage in Lincoln. And so he's tied up, she ungags him, and he tells John not to give anything over. And then Meg just fully kills him when John says that he doesn't have the Colt. John then says that he'll kill Meg, but then he agrees to give the Colt because Meg threatens to kill anyone who's ever helped them, which is a lot of people. The location that she's giving is a warehouse, and he says it'll take him over a day to drive there. She says midnight tonight or they all die. The plan is that John is going alone with a fake gun, and the boys are going to keep the real gun and kill the demon when it comes to kill Marianne and her baby that night. And then Dean makes John promise to get out if things go south. John says there's only 4 bullets left in the gun. Obviously, he used one on Luther. And so without the special bullets, the gun is like useless. The boys are staking out the house that the demon is supposed to show up at, and they have some small talk. Sam thanks Dean for everything, and it pisses Dean off because he's like, no one is dying tonight. So we see John pull up to the warehouse, and then we see Meg pull up to the warehouse, and she doesn't see him, but we do. And he's like on the roof, and he blesses a big water tank to turn it like holy. Later on, John and Meg meet, and she demands the gun, and he hesitates, but then like a second demon comes out, and so now he's outnumbered. John hands over the gun, and the second demon like picks it up, and Meg tells him to check if it's real, and so he shoots Meg. She's obviously pissed, but she's not dead, so that means it's a fake gun. John then runs, and he's like underneath the building in the boiler room, and he hits a pipe, and all this holy water comes spraying out. The demons can't follow him, and so this is like cutting back and forth between John and the boys, but we see him like running around outside, and he like stops to grab his phone when he is telepathically pinned to the wall. Yep, back to the boys. So they're trying to call, and like John's phone is off, so like maybe Meg is just late, which would imply that it's already midnight, but we also saw on the clock that the woman dies at 9:45. I'm a little confused. The car radio starts having static, and the wind picks up, and the house lights flicker. The boys like try to break into the house. The dad then tries to attack them with a baseball bat, and the mom like runs upstairs to the nursery to grab the baby, but that's where the yellow-eyed demon is. We see the figure, and then the mom gets like pinned to the wall and starts going up. Sam runs in and tries to shoot the demon, but he like misses as it dissipates into like a bunch of smoke. Sam grabs the mom, Dean grabs the baby, and then the crib just catches fire. They look back and they see the demon back in the nursery, and Sam is fully ready to run into this burning building to go kill him. Obviously, Dean stops him. Back at the motel, John isn't picking up, and Sam is really pissed off because like Dean didn't let him burn himself alive for a chance to like try and kill this demon that he already missed once. Dean is rational and says only Sam would be dead, and if they spent their whole lives hunting for it, it isn't worth dying for, which is like, damn, dude, that's what your dad's been doing for the last 24 years. Like, alright. Dean then wishes that they never find the demon if that means that Sam dies, and that even killing the demon won't bring back like Jess and Mary, and so that pisses off Sam, and he personally pins Dean to the wall. Dean says that he's barely holding it together because the three of them are all he has. And the episode ends with Meg picking up John's phone and saying that the boys messed up and they'll never see their dad again. Are you guys ready for the last episode? Episode 122, Devil's Trap. I highly recommend this episode. I think it's a fun one. I feel like you need all the context of the season to like make it really satisfying, but like now you have it all. You can pause, go watch the episode, and then come back if you want. But we pick up right where the last episode ended. Dean takes the gun off the table and like manically decides that they have to go on the run. Sam says that there's only 3 bullets left and that they should stay. Dean says that they need to go find Meg, and maybe John's still alive and they can trade the gun. But like Meg didn't say anything about that, and so Dean just says that they need to get help. Are you guys ready for this? Oh, I'm so excited. We cut to the boys at an auto salvage yard in South Dakota. There's a cute Rottweiler, his name is Rumsfield, and then we see Bobby. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, welcome. Bobby's like the boys' like real dad. Like he used to take them out to like play, I was gonna say fetch, play catch. He's not like their biological father, but like when John is out on a mission, like he would leave the boys with Bobby because he's kind of like this command center for a lot of hunters who like ask him for research and ask him for like to like pretend to be their supervisors when they're pretending to be the FBI. Oh, I love Bobby. So he gives the boys whiskey. It is laced with holy water. They don't react, which is great. And so Dee mentions that he wasn't sure if they should come back because the last time he saw Bobby, he was threatening to fill John with buckshot. Yeah. But like Bobby has so many books and like so many years of experience and so many different people telling them their experience. And so Sam's just like looking through a book and finds the Key of Solomon, and it's like a protective circle that traps demons. So Bobby tells the boys it's like been a bad year. He usually hears of like 3 to 4 demonic possessions a year, and there are 27 this year. There's like a lot more demons, and it seems that the Winchesters are like in the middle of it all. Suddenly, Meg just breaks down the door. So Dean like throws holy water in her face, and she just slaps him, and he goes flying into a bookcase. Sam and Bobby are like backing up into the living room, and Meg is like getting really pissed off about this fake gun situation, and the boys are like trying to hide away from her. Dean like gets up and says that they were counting on her following them. There's a devil trap on the ceiling that she didn't catch. And so now she's just standing there and she can't get out. We then cut to Meg being tied up in a chair under the trap, and Bobby has fully salted the windows and the doors to keep any other demons out. Dean and Meg start like having a back and forth with some like decent snarkiness that I don't think I can edit in here, but I would recommend just watching this episode. Here's a quick summary I can read off my notes. Dean asks where John is. She says, be nice, so he calls her a bitch. She then asks if he kisses his mom with that mouth. Oh wait, she's dead. Dean asks where his dad is again, and she says that she killed him herself, and Dean hits her across the face. Meg says it's a turn on and Dean just walks away. According to Bobby, Meg is a real girl. She's just being possessed by this demon, and so every time they hurt the body, it doesn't affect the demon, but it is like affecting the girl inside. And it's funny because like the boys didn't realize this, because when they looked up Meg originally, or like the second time they met her, they like found a real girl named Meg in Massachusetts, and like that they didn't believe that this was just some girl possessed. I don't know, their demon logic was a little off. And so the boys start an exorcism to send the demon to hell, and Meg is like trying to fight it. She starts telling them about how like John begged for mercy when she slit his throat. Dean says, and I quote, I hope for your sake you're dying, because if that's true, I swear to God, I will march into hell myself and slaughter each and every one of you. The exorcism then continues, and Dean says that he doesn't believe that John is dead. The chair then starts like sliding around on the ground, and Meg says that John will be dead. So Dean stops Sam, and they ask her like where he is. And so John is in Jefferson City, Missouri, but she doesn't know anything else or where the yellow-eyed demon is. And so Dean just tells Sam to finish the job. Bobby then steps in, and he's been thinking about this since Dean slapped Meg, of if the demon leaves her body, then this poor girl is just gonna die. This girl fell out of a 7-story window. The only reason she's still walking is because the demon is like puppeting her. Dean then says to take her out of her misery, and Sam just continues. Like, no, maybe you should listen to Bobby. But no. The classic black smoke then comes out of her mouth, and it hits the protective circle and dissipates. And so the girl is still alive. And so the boys take her out of the chair and lay her on the ground as they call 911. She starts telling them about how she was controlled by the demon for a year and how terrible it was, when Dean just like fully interrupts and asks her if she was like telling the truth about where John is. The real Meg then says yes, but it's a trap, and that the yellow-eyed demon isn't there, but there are other terrible demons there. She says something about how they're by the river and the word sunrise, and then she just dies. The boys then leave before the cops get there, and Bobby gives Sam like a big book and asks them to bring John if they all make it out alive. We then see the boys by a bridge, and Dean is like prepping all his weapons as Sam is like reading from the book and drawing this like big symbol on the trunk of the car, so like if they leave the Colt in there, demons can't break in. Which is like, it's in white pencil. I don't know why they don't think that someone could just like scratch it off or have someone else wipe it off. But oh well, the boys are fighting. Dean thinks they should keep the gun to save John, and Sam thinks that John would be pissed if they used any of the last 3 bullets on anyone other than the yellow-eyed demon. Dean is pissed that these men are just stuck on revenge, so ready to sacrifice themselves when Dean is the one who's going to have to bury them. Dean says fine to Sam about leaving the gun because it's their only leverage, and we see him like standing by the trunk holding it. We then cut to them walking by the river where they see Sunrise Apartments, and there's like a whole family outside. The demons can just be anyone. They decide to pull the fire alarm and get all the humans out. We then cut to a creepy couple just like sitting at a table staring at each other, and then one goes up and he checks on John in the bedroom. And he's just like laid spread eagle on the bed, all tied up. Dean then outside goes up to a firefighter and says that he really wants to go up and save his little Yorkie who pees when it's nervous. Sam uses this distraction to like grab them 2 firefighter suits, and we see them inside like opening all the doors, making sure everyone's evacuated. And when they get to the creepy couple, they spray them in the face with holy water. When the demons are like weakened, they like throw them into a closet, lock it, and put a bunch of like salt around the door, which doesn't make sense because I feel like if you open the door, you could just like disrupt it all, but whatever. The boys get out of their costumes, they find John all tied up and unconscious, but still barely breathing. Sam then throws holy water on John to make sure that he's not possessed. John wakes up, and they start getting him out there when someone outside the building gets possessed by a demon, and like the eyes are fully black, and they come upstairs. And the Winchesters are helping John, and they have to escape through the bedroom window. And John somehow can climb down the ladder even though he can barely walk. Which doesn't make sense. I feel like his legs would have given out, but whatever. So Sam gets jumped and like beat up by one of the demons, and Dean walks over and just shoots the demon in the head with the Colt. We have 2 bullets left. Obviously, We saw him with the trunk open. We never actually saw him putting it away and locking it. The Winchesters then run off and they retreat to like a cabin in the woods, and Sam thanks Dean for saving his life. Dean is like introspective and he says it's wild that he killed this demon. There was like a person in there and he was so ready to kill both him and Meg. The things that he does for this family scares him. John walks out of the bedroom like almost completely fine and says that he shouldn't feel bad, which like bad father of the year award. But he's proud of Dean for the first time ever for using the gun to protect his brother, and he agrees that both him and Sam can be like too obsessive on revenge. Dean is like touched and he says thanks, and then the lights flicker. John goes to the window. He tells Sam to put out lines of salt everywhere and then double check them. He then tells Dean to hand him the gun, and Dean hesitates. Not always following daddy's orders. Dean says that John would have been pissed if he used the bullet on anyone but the yellow-eyed demon. And so he points the Colt at John and says, "You're not my dad." Sam runs in, confused, obviously. John says that Dean's lost his mind. Dean says that John must have been possessed at some point while they were saving him. John says that Sam needs to then take the gun from Dean, and Sam says no, and he stands with his brother. John starts to tear up and says if they're so sure it's like not him to just shoot. Dean hesitates, and John looks up and says, "Thought so." And when he blinks, his eyes turn yellow. The boys then get thrown against the walls. The Colt falls, and the demon picks it up and puts it on the table. He's like, "Hey Sam, use your psychic powers to pick it up if you're so powerful." Sam asks about the holy water that they threw on John, and the demon says that it doesn't work on him because he's just so old and powerful. He has like a really good villain monologue, and I really do love Jeffrey Morgan, except there is some weird editing. Like his face is very gray. I think it's because of the yellow eyes effect. So Meg and the guy that Dean shot were actually the yellow-eyed demon's like children, I guess. And we did see her making a phone call to people, and she called him like father or dad that first time. Sam asked why Mary and Jess had to die, and the yellow-eyed demon says because they were in the way for his plans for Sam. So like it's a little bit his fault. No matter how much Dean said it wasn't. And I guess he also has a bunch of other children just like Sam, like Max Miller. Dean makes a monologuing joke and gets the demon's attention, who like starts yelling at Dean and being like, "Yeah, you hide your pain with your snarky comments. You don't know what's happening." Okay, my camera just died. We're so close to the end, so I'm gonna try and speed run this. I'm sorry if everything's moved. The demon can like read John's thoughts, right? He talks about how his family doesn't need Dean and he needs them, and Sam's John's favorite. Even when they fight, John cares more about Sam than he ever cares about Dean, which is like, damn. And then Dean makes a comment about how the demon must be so proud of his kids. Oh wait, they're dead. And so Yellow-Eyed Demon just starts killing Dean. Dean is like pouring blood down his shirt, starts begging John not to let the demon kill him. Sam is like staring at the Colt like very intently, but he gets visions and not like telepathy. So that doesn't really make sense, even though he did use it before when like Max had him pinned in that closet. Dean is like practically dead when John kind of like takes over the demon for a half second, and that's enough time for Sam to no longer be pinned against the wall. He grabs the Colt. Instead of killing John or the yellow-eyed demon, because you know they're in the same body, he just shoots him in the leg. Samuel. And so then Dean is no longer pinned to the wall either. Dean is bleeding out but still talking, and he tells Sam to check on John. And he's bleeding out because he's shot in the leg, and he says that the demon is still inside of him. And so he tells Sam to shoot him directly in the heart. "Sir, we have one bullet left." Dean says no, Sam hesitates, and then the black smoke just like dissipates out of his mouth. We then cut to the boys in the car. Sam is driving them to the hospital and says that it's 10 minutes away. And John is mad because he thought they were on the same page and that the demon comes first above all else. But then Sam like looks in the rearview mirror and he sees Dean in the back seat, half alive, and he goes, "No sir, not everything." I wish I was joking when I say this, but I'm not, and I think you need to go watch this episode before I say it. This is your last warning. Okay, so they're driving down the road and they get T-boned by a semi-truck. I wish I was kidding. I thought this was a season 2. I got season 1 and season 2 finales mixed up every time. And so the last scene of the entire first season of Supernatural is a demon truck driver, and it pans down to show all 3 Winchester boys in the car, unconscious and covered in blood. That's it. That's season 1. It's wild, y'all. Like, I'm glad we meet Bobby. For some reason, I had that in my head for season 2. In the second season, we learn a lot more about the yellow-eyed demons, like special children. A fun fact, the Supernatural wiki says that this creature has been in every single episode because Sam technically counts. Even if we never talk about it again after a certain point, like, they're still there, just haunting the narrative. So yeah, please comment down below your like favorite fan theories and headcanons, or if you've never seen the show and you made it this far, thank you. And comment like what the wildest thing that happened was, because to me, I know there's the semi truck, but the homophobic child throws me for a loop every time. Also, just the sheer number of times they get thrown into the walls. Any more information you want, it is out there in like text form, but I will be back giving you a general summary of the show. I like your shoelaces, and I'll see you in the next one.